I'm pressing the go live. Let me just tell the world real quick that I'm actually streaming. Give me a minute. Let me tell all the folks in Discord. All the cool folks over there. I don't want them to forget. That'd be awful. Because then that'll be one more person in the comments saying, no, I missed the stream, and I don't want that. VFX work and working on a new video. Yo, that'd be an epic message. Let's send that out. Let's send that out to @everyone. Let's do it. Publish. Will do. Okay. I wonder how many people that have like been sitting in chat waiting for the last 10 minutes. Nobody yet, it looks like. What a shame. Whoa, where's chat? Oh, there's actually no, there's a few. Hello. Real McAfee. Dude, it's the real one. Oh my goodness, that's awesome. Halo J. That's a cool way of saying hello. I'm assuming that's that's a greeting in a... It looks Swedish, I want to say, but I don't know. Could be wrong. Unknown, hello. I know we're going straight in today. No opening screen, no loading screen. We're running the stream on an SSD now, so we don't have any load times. Yo, Gus Guthenson's here. That's awesome. Hold on a minute. Let me just rearrange my window so I can see everyone at once. And I accidentally opened 2 instances of Unreal. I don't want that. All right, give me a sec, guys. Hold up. Yo, you guys are gonna check out what I've been cooking. This is awesome. Before I do that, how's everyone? How are we all doing over in the chat planet right now? Hey Berg. Hey real FD, the real one. That's a cool little emote. Landfair wave. Oh, that reminds me. I totally forgot. Sorry, guys. I remember it might have been a few weeks ago now. I said we were gonna do. I was gonna like try to organize something where like people in the Discord could make emotes or something. But sorry, I've just been so busy. I completely forgot. We'll get around to it someday. Okay, I just got a lot on my plate right now. You doing good? That's awesome. Rog Lobster, good morning. Oh yeah, you're an Australian too, so it would be morning for you. See, I'm never used to people watching me being in the same time zone as me. It's always a bit weird. Every time I get a notification, I get excited because the game is peak. Oh, well, thank you, but I don't think the game's peak yet. I think it will be once I actually finish it. But that's the quest, is like, how peak can we get it? How high can we get that peak? That's the question I ask myself every morning. Watching the stream while I work? Oh, well, you better not tell your boss that. That's, you don't want to get in trouble. Actually, I don't know, because I haven't, the last job I did, because I used to be a games teacher, so you never really had the opportunity to watch things while working, because I had to pay attention to my students all the time. So I don't actually know what the general workplace culture is like in terms of watching things at work. I mean, I guess if you're getting things done, it's probably okay. But I don't know, because like, I don't know, maybe that's just the norm. I have no idea. I have no idea whether... I'm trying to figure out if I should encourage that behavior or not. But considering that I stand to benefit from you watching me while working, I'm going to encourage that you do that more. 100%. So do I have my desktop? Hold on, let me just check. I got my desktop open, right? Cool. Well, I guess we might as well just get into it. So, I've been doing a bit more work on Gabi's VFX. I've changed up around a few things. I've made some particles bigger, some particles smaller. Just a bit of tuning. I've like lessened the intensity of the footsteps a wee bit because it was getting a bit extreme. So I've toned it down a wee bit just so that it's a bit less, I don't know, because you want it to be there, but you don't want it to be noticeable. That's the trick, isn't it? You don't want people like noticing it. The good design is when you don't notice it, but bad is when, actually, well, I'll show you what bad looks like. Because I was just looking at some footage the other day of something I recorded right before the last devlog, and it was like gameplay footage of Gabi. It was like this one, right? And can I like zoom in on that? And you know what's funny is that I thought this was a cool clip at the time, but I'm looking at it now, and without the particles, it feels kind of empty. You know what I mean? It feels a bit what's the word? I don't know. It feels a bit bare. It feels like a bit barren, right? So that's actually good then, because it means that with the particles, if you watch the gameplay with particles and the particles aren't noticeable, but then if you watch it without particles and and their absence is noticeable, I think that's sort of the sweet spot. You know, you don't want them to be so you don't want their presence to be so overwhelming that it's like, oh, this person put in way too much effort in the particle. You don't want that. But what you want is sort of that thing where they're nice, and then when you take them out, if you look at them without it, it's like, oh, something's missing here. Something's not right. So I think I might have struck in the balance there, which is pretty cool, I reckon. And there's a few fixes and stuff I've done as well. A lot of it's just been cleanup mainly, because doing particles, like, this is the first time I've actually done it. I've like never before this, even when I was using like another engine, like when I was making games in Unity, I never really touched particles that much. So this has been like kind of an experience for me to like figure out everything and learn it. I'm just trying to find where I've actually where I've put these effects. Oh yeah, here there they all are. So a lot of it might not look too oh, I forgot to show you these actually. So I've gotten like 4 hours of sleep. I'm a little discombobulated, but I've got some particles for grinding now. So I totally forgot to show those. So we got those. I also fixed this thing where when she lands on a rail, because it plays the land particle, right? But last week when it would play it at the wrong spot. So now when she lands, that little shockwave of when she lands, that now plays on the rail, whereas before it used to play like a bit above the rail, which looked kind of strange. So that's now playing on the rail. And we've got these cool sparks, which I hand modeled myself. We've got a cool material on them. And I feel like maybe I don't know, like maybe you guys can weigh in, but I feel like there is maybe something a bit extra I could add, but I don't want to overdo it. See, that's the thing. I don't want to go too far, but I'm trying to think if there's anything more to these sparks I got to do for the grind. Maybe audio will make up for it, because I think with better audio it would probably be fine. Because again, I don't want to go too over with the particles. But yeah, we got those for, and I've got them animated. Well, I say animated, they're actually not animated, but they look animated, and they look animated at a limited FPS too. So I've got that going. And when I say animated, the trick I've done, because like maybe there's like a way to do this. Actually, no, they are animated. Sorry, yeah, my bad. These actually are animated, but it's just they're not continuous. So what I think the way these works is very simple actually. This one, and that's the thing I like, is that I've figured out I'm familiar enough with this editor to know how to like do simple things, and I think simple is good. You know, you don't want to be going, because I was looking at some of the stock Unreal particles, and they have so many layers to them, but some of them won't even play if you have the graphics quality too low. And I'm thinking, I don't want to mess with that. I just want like particles that are just simple, that do the job, that are like purpose built. I don't want any of this extra stuff on it. But this is very simple. All it does is I've got like a scale by life, which again has some limited keyframes on it, that with no interpolation. If I turn that off, they'll all spawn, because it's spawning a new one of these meshes like every second, and it'll spawn it at a slightly different size, which adds some variation. But then each one that is spawned, it'll like shrink down like this, and then when you have it on a loop like this, it kind of looks like it's just continuously sparking all the time. And maybe there is a better way of doing it. Maybe there is a way to get this to just exist perpetually and then just rescale itself on a loop. But I mean, this does the job. It does the job fine. And I've because of like just the general way the system works, I've gone ahead and reused this for quite a few things too. So let me just turn up my volume there. So we've got the same on the skidding. So we got it on the grinding, and then on the skidding as well, I've got that same, I've got it with a different color. I've got it in white for when she skids, just around her where her feet are. It's the same mesh, it's the same particle system, just different material. And then for the slide as well, It's a bit obfuscated because of the pose and all the clouds, but I've got that spark there too. So I've been able to just reuse it in a few places. It's pretty cool. So I want that kind of effect when she's like, it's the way I look at that particle effect is like friction. Like whenever there's like strong friction somewhere, I'm trying to imagine where the heat would be. And if there's heat somewhere, I want to add one of those sparks. Because that's sort of how it would be. Like, if you imagine you were Gabi for a second, and you were... I mean, hell, if you're a kid, if you've ever been a kid, which I hope most of you have been before, and not just, you know, grown in a tank or something. But if you've been a kid, you'll remember if you try and slide on carpet, you get, like, carpet burn. That's because the burn is coming from all the friction generated from... Well, I don't know. I'm no physicist, but I know that friction is a thing. And that's what's going on. So anytime that there's friction, I have that little spark particle going. That's why for the rails especially, you imagine the amount of carpet burn you get trying to grind on these. So that's kind of where that all comes in. I think audio probably is going to do a big part in like elevating these, and that's the bit I've started kind of looking into, but I didn't get around to like fully implementing all the audio I wanted yet. I don't know if I can like preview some of that already. Maybe some rotation. I did try that, and it kind of messes up when I try to rotate things. I'm just gonna, yeah. That I don't know if I can get it to do it, but I think if it's like here, inishmet, yeah, it'll do stuff like this, which is kind of like, you know, it's like, well, yeah, we'll leave that on, and we'll watch the grinding again if we add some rotation. Yeah, it gets a bit whack, okay? It gets a bit crazy. Because, yeah, I've modeled these sparks to kind of not... To be, like, facing one direction, usually. I don't know if I can... Maybe I can open that file real quick. We'll smash open that file. I'll show you how that looks, because I hand-modeled that particle effect. I do want to remodel the clouds, the smoke clouds, because those are just from an asset pack, and they are way higher poly than they need to be. So I want to find a way to get them in Blender and to just decimate the hell out of them. Because that would be nice if they weren't like 100 polys each. I think that'd be pretty cool. Oh, hold on. Where's Blender? Blender. There we go. Let me show you this. So this is the actual like particle effect itself for the spark. It's literally, it took me like, what, 20 minutes. I just kind of did... You know, it's funny, because one thing I love about modeling is that once you know things like symmetry, you can shortcut the hell out of everything. So all I really did was model, I don't know if I can, like, show it here. If I can wireframe. Like, I modeled, like, this corner. Like, I started from scratch just with vertices only. And I basically just modeled this, and then I just kept flipping it and flipping it and flipping it until it met all the way around. And yeah, so like it's literally just that but repeated. But when you're in the heat of the moment, you're not going to notice. You're going to have no idea. And if it's rotating constantly, I mean, because I think there actually might be rotation after all, actually, because I remember... Oh, maybe not. Okay, maybe I was wrong. I think I get what you mean by rotation now, and I might try and fix that real quick. Because I could have sworn... No, because there is... The rotation I was doing just then before was wrong. I know that there is a... I did have it rotating, though. I must have deleted it. Because what it's meant to do, it's meant to twist. That's what it's supposed to be doing. So we'll fix that real quick. I think it's just on the X. I got to zero out the other axes. So that it... Yeah, there we go. Now it kind of, like, twists. That's what it's supposed to be doing. Now, I could get it at a rotation rate, but rotation rate is, like, smooth. It doesn't let me interpolate and remove in-betweens, which is going to kind of ruin the look a bit. So we'll see how that looks just with that. I mean, that's a bit better. I don't like how it seems to squash them, though. But, I mean, it looks a bit more... Looks a bit spikier, actually. Maybe that's a good thing. It looks a bit less tame, which is actually probably good. Yeah, I think I like that, actually. We'll try it on the other curvy rail. I like how... Because it's a bit easier to see the particles here when Gabi's text box isn't in the way. There we go. Yeah, that looks a bit more wild. It looks a bit more... It looks a bit less manually... Well, it's not that having it look manually keyframed is bad, but it looks less like a controlled explosion type thing, if you know what I mean. It looks a bit more random, which is cool. I like that. Yeah. You know, it's really funny, actually, because I've been trying to study other characters and other particle systems in games. I was looking at Mario 64 this week and Mario Sunshine, and what other game? It might have been Jet Set Radio I was looking at. And you know what's really funny? I remember them having way more particles than they actually have. It's quite interesting. And I'm like, I think I've like sort of just reached like the tip of like what I would be like okay with adding in, because a lot of the time, even when jumping, they don't even, or footsteps, a lot of these in these games, they don't even have footstep particles or anything, but some games do. So it's like, I wonder what it is that makes them choose what kind of particles to add. And I think it was what game was it? It might have been like Sonic Unleashed I was looking at, and I noticed that I remember that game having a lot of particles, but when I went and actually ran around in it, it was like they had a particle for him landing and like footstep ones, but they're very like not stylized. They're very realistic, so you don't really see them that well. And then they have all the boost effects and whatever. But apart from that, it's like not. I thought it would be a way bigger task than I thought. You know, I was expecting it to be like twice as hard, but it's kind of like it's something that's sort of there, but I think it's more with combat games that particles, they go a bit overboard. Or like Smash Bros. That's the other game I was studying. I was looking at Smash Bros. Brawl, and that game is sort of like the most particle-heavy game I think I've seen. And I think I was like I had like the Mandela effect, thinking that every game I'd played had the same level as Smash Bros., which isn't the case, actually. But the Smash Bros. Particles are incredible. I don't know if you guys maybe remember what those look like, but they are pretty cool, and they have like insane footstep effects. It's pretty like up there, but it is a fighting game, so you know, maybe that's the pattern where it's like games that are fighting games have a rule where they have to have more particles or something. I guess that would be my guess anyway. So yeah, but check this out. How many polys do you reckon this is? I actually haven't checked, but I reckon it's probably there should be a thing that lets me show, what was it? Statistics. I can't remember where it is, but I know it's in here somewhere. Because I'm actually kind of curious how much polys this was. There should statistics. There we go. 140. Actually, that's a bit higher than I thought. Maybe I could. I don't know. It does the job. We don't need to go and optimize it more. But that's pretty good. When is Gabi? I think when Gabi's going slow rather on the rail, it looks kind of off. I mean, maybe. The thing is, to change that, I don't know how you would do it. Because, yeah, I don't think I can fix that, actually. That's just going to have to be it. Because the way it works... Oh, sorry, because I'm remembering... I should have written all this down before I went on. Sorry, I literally just woke up and went live. I've been just kind of, like, busy all over the place lately. But the, a lot of the work that you're not seeing with this is... a lot of the cleanup I was doing wasn't just with materials, but also with code. And I realized, I think last week I said that there was some complicated thing I had to do to get the particles playing on a loop. And I'll show you what I mean. Because, look, I know I've been using Unreal for a little while, but I'm by no means an Unreal expert. Like, I wouldn't even call me an expert in the things I use, but I'm familiar with parts of the engine I use, but I haven't used, like, this is the first time, again, I'm using the particle editor. So the tricky thing is, like, knowing the right way to trigger particles, and that was what I was getting stuck on mainly. And I'll show you some of that. So if we go to the way this is all set up, because I've now set it up more properly now, which is part of, like, what I was, like, doing a lot of cleanup with that. So if we go to the grind, wherever that is, grind fast, there we go. So if we go here, you'll notice that they play in this view now, and they weren't doing that before. And that's because for some of these other ones... the way it works is if you want to add particles, this is what I knew last week. I knew that if you right-clicked and go add notify, you could add things like a particle effect or a sound or whatever. The thing is that when you do it this way, you can't do anything that isn't a burst particle, which is like, these grind sparks are not meant to be burst, they're meant to be looping, and you can't play any looping particles if you just use these, right? But... So that's what I thought, right? And I'm like, oh man, am I gonna have to go into all my code and add in the stuff? And that's what I did. I went through Gabi's, like, all of her components and added in all this functionality in the blueprint code, so that it could spawn a particle system and loop it and turn it on and off depending on her state. And that's what I showed off last stream. But then there was the problem where with skidding specifically, it would spawn in the smoke particle, but then if you animation cancelled it, it wouldn't remove the skid particle, and she'd have this dust effect coming out from between her legs constantly. And I thought, oh, I gotta figure out how to fix that somehow. And I didn't end up fixing that, but I ended up not needing to, because then my brain, I took gamer supplements and my brain grew 20%, and I figured out the right way to do it. And the right way to do it is using these, which I didn't know about. I think I stumbled across these like just by chance. I was like looking at some of these other menus. I was like, what the hell is in these? And then I found the right one. And you have to go into this sub menu where it's like timed particle effect, and it gives you a range, and then you can put in looping particles. So, and this is relevant to your question, because the way this works is that it just spawns. Actually, you know what? You actually might be right. That actually might be possible, I just realized. Because she does have 2 separate animations for her grind speed. So maybe we could do that after all. Because what I was going to say is that resizing these depending on speed would be impossible, because there's no way to control them. Like, they spawn in on the animation. I have no idea what you would do to like rescale them depending on the... Like, that would be... I don't even know how you'd do that. But I know what you could do is that if you went to the grind slow animation and you shrunk them down there, that would probably do this, what you were thinking. So, question is, it doesn't give you a scale offset here, does it? No, it doesn't. So I might have to like, real quick, well, let's try that real quick, because I'm actually very curious to see how that'll look. But real quick, multiply scale. Well, that's the thing. How do you, like, if you're spawning the particles this way, I know it sounds like if you pseudo-cat it out in your head, it sounds simple, right? But I'm using, by the way, this is Cascade. This is the Cascade particle editor. I'm not using Niagara. I know it's meant to be the cutting edge, whatever, but I always avoid the latest thing, and there's reasons for that. We'll get into a bit later in the stream. But the, for the scaling it by velocity, because then you have to, like, firstly, where do you put that code? Let's say you put it in the character blueprint or something, which might not be the best place, but let's just say for argument's sake you do that. How do you then get a reference to these? I don't know. I don't think you can do that, because what you'd have to do is you'd have to like go, you know, cast to particle or whatever. But if this is attached to the animation, I don't think it lets you get the spawn particle from that in blueprints. I don't think it lets you do that. I don't know. I could be wrong, but I can't imagine how I would do it that way. But doing it this way, where I just change the scale, I can literally in my head imagine that happening, which is what I'm about to do. So I want to give that a shot. It's simpler. So if I go to grind, and we'll just copy paste this real quick. I don't think you can do child classes and stuff with particles, which is a shame. But that's probably there's probably a good reason for that. But if we do grind, and then we'll do like slow, and I'll rename the other one to grind fast. And then on slow, I'll just change the initial size. AJ says, always avoid the latest thing is very useful. Thank you. Well, if you stick around, after I show you guys the particles, I'm going to show you something else I've been cooking that goes deeper into that idea. I've been thinking about that a lot lately. So if I just go in here and change initial size, we'll halve these. We'll cut this in half. There we go. Oh, that felt great. And then if we go, there's going to be one problem with this though, and we'll get to that in a second. But if we go to grind slow, did that do it? I think it doesn't update unless I pick another animation and then go back. Yeah, there we go. Now the sparks are a bit smaller. However, there is something I've noticed where it isn't playing the grind fast animation sometimes. So that's something I got to work out. But yeah, now the trails are a little smaller when she's grinding slow. The problem is that she's meant to, when she goes fast, it's meant to then go to the grind fast animation. Cripps is online. Whoa, hold on. Sorry, I talked over you there. What was that? Was that a text to speech? All hail Gabi's father, Mr. Cripps is online. That's right, baby. Daddy's home. Thanks so much for the 500 bits. Yeah, man. You know, I kind of, you know, maybe I am her dad after all. You know, I feed her. I feed her Nutrigrain and only that. I take care of her. I teach her things. You know, maybe that's what Project Feline is. The parents we found along the way. I don't know. But thank you. Man, 500 whole bits. That's awesome. I haven't had that many bits in a while. Cooch and Rain. Yeah, we gotta swap around the letters, guys, to avoid a Kellogg's lawsuit. Dude, I remember someone did like some fan art of her with Nutrigrain that was really funny. I gotta find that. I gotta track that down. But I remember seeing it in the Discord, I think, and it was like, it was so good. Thank you for giving her a healthy, varied diet. Oh, well, hey man, I'm doing it for my daughter, okay? That's how we're doing it. I mean, how else do you think she got these big shoulders? I mean, you guys haven't seen some of you might not have seen the comparison. We'll have a look. We'll see. We'll show you the result of no Nutrigrain versus Nutrigrain. So if I go get her mesh in here, let's do a side by side. You know how, like, I don't know if your parents did this, but when I was a kid, my parents used to like measure me on like a wall every like few years to track how high I was getting. We're gonna do a version of this right now. We'll see how much more muscular Gabi's gotten. We're gonna do a live Kellogg's sponsorship right now, guys. Let's do a side by side. I don't think I've actually shown them side by side before, ever. So this will have to be we'll have to put this in the video. We'll get her out of this lame T pose though. We'll get her in her idle pose. Let's go. We'll do that real quick. Oh wait, that's not idle. That's the no, I want the new idle. Get me the new one. There we go. So you can see, before I fed her a steady diet of Nutrigrain, this is back when I didn't feed her at all, and you can see, look at her skin, it's all pale. It's just, you know, let me get a zoom in, let me get a close up. You can see that, you know, her face is kind of like, she has no strong features. It's all just like smoothed. It's like smooth brain, but her whole face. Her eyes just look so vacant, you know what I'm saying? She's got like outlines where they're not meant to be. She's like pixelated as hell. Like, that's what happens when you're malnourished, okay? When you don't have love and care. When it isn't made with love and care, you get this malnourished... I can't even look at it anymore. I can't even look at it anymore. Then you get yourself some Iron Man food in you. And look at her complexion, man. Look how clean that is now. There's no pixelation. There's no acne scars. You know, I've basically solved her entire life problems by feeding her a steady diet. See, when I was modeling her, that was actually all performative. I wasn't actually doing any modeling. She was just like, she actually just grew, like, organically. So she actually just started transforming. I would open up my Blu-ray tray and just put little grains of Nutrigrain in it, and I'd close the lid. And then, like, over a period of 9 months, she, like, transformed on her own. I didn't do anything. She just did that on her own. And then she, like, all her acne problems went away. Because, I mean, that's kind of what it looks like now. I'm looking at this. This was meant to be like a blush effect, but because it's so pixelated, it just looks like acne when I look at it now. But then, yeah, and then, you know, no clipping, more musculature. Look at the silhouette, man. Look at that. Look at those shoulders. Look at the outline. And then look at this, though. Look at this. This is weak. Freaking weak stature, skinny arms. No, man. But yeah, that's why all of us, man, we got to get on Nutrigrain right now. We got to be doing Iron Man food. And for those who don't know, because I'm just realizing there's probably Americans in chat that have no idea what I'm talking about. You guys think I'm talking about the breakfast bar. No, 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 no. I don't know how many of you know the Nutrigrain law. In Australia, it's a whole cereal, and it's branded in this ridiculous way. This is the Australian Nutrigrain. I know some of you Americans are probably not in on the meme, but this is like what Tony Abbott eats for breakfast, okay? And he's a triathlon guy. He's fit. He's fighting fires. And it's like, this is the stuff. It wasn't me modeling. That's not how Gabi got strong. I didn't do anything. It was all the Nutrigrain. You know, protein, fiber, multigrain, right? So that's what you got to have. You got to have all of that just surging in, and then you get to be big and strong like Gabi. She even got a bit taller. I mean, look at it. You can see. And I'm not making this up. You can literally see it. She's slightly taller now. So if you're like me and you're a bit short, and you think it's, you know, it's over for you, you're a sub 5, just, you know, if you just do what Gabi did and just only eat Nutrigrain, you will gain like an extra inch from what it looks like, an inch, I think. I don't know Unreal's metric units here, but yeah, she's gotten a bit taller. So, you know, that's pretty good. That's pretty cool. Is her kitchen full of Nutrigrain? Well, I mean, what do you think? Well, the thing is that because she only eats one thing, she doesn't need a kitchen. She just has a box that she carries with her everywhere, you know? Or she has the video game character inventory where she just pulls it from behind her back and she has her cereal. She doesn't need a kitchen or anything. Dry food versus wet food? Oh, yeah. See, that's the thing with cereal. I know everyone's going to think this is crazy, but I like eating cereal dry, personally. I mean, that's how the Iron Men would eat it. They'd eat it dry. But if you don't do that, that's fine. I don't care. I'm a dry cereal guy. I actually don't know. I think Gabi doesn't. She just eats it dry too, I think. She's not a big fan of, I don't know. She's not a big fan of the milk, I take it. She's kind of outgrown milk a bit. See, old Gabi, she was a milk drinker, okay? She would have it with milk. But new Gabi, she's so hardcore, she just takes it right out of she doesn't even put it in a bowl. She just starts scooping it from the box. That's what she does. Sculpting character course when? Oh, never. I'm not doing a course, man. Never. No, I'm not doing that. You could, like, look, you guys don't need me to learn how to sculpt. You know, there's heaps of other people that can teach you how to do it. I got a mission to do. If I started doing courses, I'd have, like, no time to actually make games anymore, which would be a real shame. And who would want to take a course from a guy that hasn't even made a game? That'd be a disaster. That would be, like, you know, I wouldn't trust a course from someone that didn't finish their game. Anyway, we'll get off the Nutrigrain bit for a bit. The glow up is crazy. Thanks, Berg. Get the Kellogg's bunch. Well, actually, you know, maybe we got to do that. Maybe we got to go in for it, you know. But I don't know. I don't know if I'm like, am I big enough yet to be on Kellogg's radar? Hell, I'll tell you what. If we get to 1 million subs, which, you know, if we pray hard enough, that might happen. Maybe we'll do it. Dry cereal gang rise up. Hell yeah. Okay, there's some of you like me in chat. Awesome. Thanks, Gus. Sorry, you guys have so much nice things to say. Thank you. Well, yeah, the thing is, because I'm sure you're probably wondering, because last week we were talking about the devlog for the model. And there's a lot. I think I know what I want to say about, because I've been taking a bit of a break from that episode lately, because it is just, I think I was saying last week, it's just a lot. And we were looking at all the slideshow. I don't know if you guys were here last week, but those who were, you'll remember, we found all the Guilty Gear Arc System Works slideshows that I had to study to, like, build her. But I misremembered how much information there was. Because it turns out there's like 5 slideshows worth of stuff that are like 100 slides each or something, or like 40 slides each, and in total it's got to be something like 200 slides or something crazy. So I've been like going back and reading those and trying to think, is there a way I can tell the story without having to like educate my whole audience on every step of the workflow? Like, can I make this more entertaining where I don't have to give a lecture on it? That's the sort of trick, and I've been getting a bit stuck with it. Because, you know, it's very easy when you're telling a story with this many technicals to get caught in the technicals and distracted from what's important. So I wanted to work on something else. I've been working on another video this week because I just need to I need to have something, but I'm getting a bit stuck with the character one. But insofar as the character one is concerned, there's a bit I'm trying to work out how to word, and I might put this at the end of it or something. And it's because the glow up, I think people watching the video will probably notice it. Hopefully. What would really suck is that if I do it and then everyone's like, oh, actually, I prefer the old one. But if I think what I want to try and wrap it up with, because what the video is really about, because we were talking a bit about that last week as well, on like what devlogs are actually about. And this episode isn't really, it's a story about Gabi's model, but it isn't supposed to really be about, it's not a modeling tutorial. It's not supposed to be about just technical modeling. But I think what it is to me, it's like live evidence of the wash your bowl attitude. Because for those that were watching me model this thing on stream, you'll know how meticulous I was with this thing and how... I mean, sorry, because I didn't model it. Gabi just grew. Okay, I just fed her lots of love and attention. But even then, you know, I paid a lot of attention to her. I made sure she had her Nutri-Grain coming in. And when she finished eating, I washed her bowl, okay? I made sure her dishes were all done. And, you know, that kind of paying attention, that level of paying attention to it, I know that at the time it probably seemed manic. And I think a lot of people, were kind of, they didn't get, like, why the hell is he fixating? Because I remember on, like, the shoulders, I was, like, I redid the shoulders, like, twice, I think. And the hips I redid 3 times. And the face I redid twice. And everyone was probably thinking, this guy's nuts. What the hell is he doing? But, you know, because I had it in my head, I was imagining this very moment right now. I had this in my imagination from like a year into the future of like getting to show it like this. And, you know, when I started doing it, it wasn't lining up. It wasn't lining up to what I imagined. And I'm like, no, this has got to be better. And I've been trying to get beneath the layers on that. Because again, I was getting stuck in the technicals, but there's a layer underneath it of... Because when I was there doing it, there's an experience you go through when you actually get the outcome you want. And maybe you guys can relate to that in sort of your own areas, when you actually finish something and it's like exactly as you envisioned it, like to the pixel. Like that, there is a satisfaction to that I'm trying to work out how to describe. But it is pretty incredible. And it's while it was like a pain to learn all of that stuff, like it was so difficult and it was so stressful, but when you come out of that, of the pressure cooker, it like makes you happy that you suffered through it. You know what I mean? So I'm trying to work out a better way to say that, because I think that is kind of what the video is really about. It's, yeah, there's the modeling and there's everything and there's the character design, but I'm trying to make sure that I keep in mind what the episode is really meant to be about. And it's about, you know, that all of that pain being worth it. Because I don't know, you guys seem to like it. I really like it. And that's what happens, because the constant temptation is to not do that, because it's easier to just not suffer. It's easier when you can just chuck on the she'll be right mate attitude and willfully not care about what you're doing. But then that, you know, that's where I got wrong the first time. You know, the attitude, the result. Because, you know, most people are probably looking at this and just see a character model, but I see the result of an attitude. That's what's really going on. So, you know, this is the result of like, it's good enough, she'll be right, mate. Just move on. That's what you get when you think like that. You get this, which is subpar and average and malnourished. You know, it shows in the result. So I'm just trying to think of a better way to explain that, because I don't know, that's something that's really important to me. And while I think it's very clearly demonstrated here in the model, but it's an attitude I'm trying to take to not every aspect of the game, mind you, because I really can't do that with everything. But it's an attitude I'm trying to take to the big picture of the experience of the game. So there's probably going to be things that I shortcut through or whatever, because I can't obviously put in 200% to everything. But as a whole, when you're playing it, that's the kind of, that result where you look at it and you see a glow up, or what, you know, the reaction that you guys were having to the model, that's the reaction I want you to have to the whole game. And when you buy it, when the mission's finally finished, when the quest is over, it's going to be one of those games, because again, because I've studied a few indie games, and the majority of the time I'm underwhelmed. And that's kind of you get underwhelmed when you're served a product that's the result of willful ignorance and willful laziness, where it's like, oh, I know this is bad, but no one's going to care. And that's sort of what you get in return. If you're doing something and you go, no one's going to care, that's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. And then, yeah, no one will care because you didn't put in any work. That's the sort of way I think about it all. So I know that's very abstract. That's a very abstract, weird layer to it, but that's kind of what making her model was really about to me. So I'm trying to work out how to, you know, Dan Packy says you'd watch a 3-hour essay about how it was modeled. Well, that's cool, but unfortunately not everyone on YouTube is a 3D enthusiast like yourself. And making a 3-hour video would cost too much time. That would be like how many months of work would that be? That'd be a lot. Like you'd have to wait a long time for that, and I don't want to leave you guys hanging too long. Unknown says, I have a feeling that I'll buy your game twice. Thank you. Well, well, let's hope we can get there at some point. Don't even edit it. 3 hours of rambling. Well, look, guys, come on. I can't just go for a big ramble on the main channel, on a main channel video. I don't know. Maybe people, I don't know. Maybe people would like it. I don't know. But I like to think that, you know, because it's the same. That's the attitude I take with my videos too, where it's like the video has to also be extremely like tightly composed. So that's why for the streams, I have a deliberate lower quality bar for streams just because of the medium. But with the videos though, I don't know. I feel like people expect more from those, right? Second channel for Guilty Gear rambling. Maybe. You know, I have thought about starting a second channel of just rambling about stuff, but I don't know, man. Because that's a thing to run, and it's like, you know, I think people would probably prefer if I just kept my mouth shut and worked. But I don't know, maybe I'm being too hard on it. I don't know, you're the audience. You guys can let me know what you think of that. Now, there's another little area here I want to go over real quick. In terms of when I don't take that attitude with something. Because like I said, that's the attitude I want to put into the key areas. Oh, by the way, thanks Lavian Arts, first time chatter. Europe, that's pretty cool. I didn't know I had fans in Europe. That's awesome. Happy to see you too. So as I was gonna say, so you know, there's certain areas, because the thing is that in the last devlog I did, I think a lot of people got threatened by the idea that I would do everything, because I think in their head they think that I'm going to, like, you know, overwork myself and burn myself out. And that's, you know, that's a good, I think that's a healthy skepticism to have, right? You know, when you hear someone saying that, I'll do it myself, you have that fear of, oh no, he's going to burn out and crash and he's going to sabotage himself. But there's a lot I haven't said about that sort of thing, that I've sort of figured out how to avoid those things. And to give you an example of what I mean, I want to talk to you guys about the drop shadow here. Now, last week I said I started working on this little shadow beneath Gabi. I don't know, you guys might have noticed it when I was running around, that she doesn't have a fancy real-time shadow anymore, and she has this low detail blob shadow now. And, you know, graphically, I know that the Unreal 5 people are going to be having a seizure saying, no, you can't do that. You have to have real-time shadows. What are you doing? But as a lot of you have pointed out, drop shadows in games are actually pretty handy because you can see where you're going to land. And I think in my kind of game, that's important to have. So, you know, I'd rather take the graphical downgrade if it actually, like, helps serve some kind of gameplay purpose. I reckon that'd be pretty cool. I'll tell you what, we'll show this off in the lab level because it looks better in there. So to tie this on what I was going to talk about, because it doesn't look like the shadows changed this much between the last week. You might look at it and go, oh, well, it looks the exact same. Like, big deal. But I've actually rebuilt the entire thing, because I think I mentioned last week I was trying to follow this tutorial on how to build a drop shadow. And this tutorial I found, man, it was so nuts, okay? It was this 30-part thing, and each part of it was like 30 minutes long on how to build this like shader that was like a drop shadow, like a low, you know, like the classic Mario 64 platformers. And it had and it turns out it's actually quite complicated to get it to work how you would want it to work, because there's so many edge cases. Like, if the character's standing on a ledge, what happens to the shadow? And if, like, they're standing on top of, like, here, like, should the surface beneath them also be in shadow or not? And there's so many things that I didn't even think about. And it's like, oh my god, I never thought of these things, right? And this tutorial series, like, covered everything. But I got up to, like, part 6, and then I watched ahead a bit more. And I'm there looking at it, and I'm just like, man, this is, like, a bit much, okay? This is, like, I don't have the patience to watch part 30 of this. And I had to make a decision because I didn't want to be spending 2 weeks on a goddamn shadow. So I took a deliberate compromise and I rebuilt it. So now this shadow, it might look the same, but this is literally just a texture plane. No fancy shaders or anything. It's probably... I said I wasn't going to do this last week because I wanted to see where the tutorial would go, but I saw where it went and it wasn't worth it. and I've made the deliberate compromise to do the plane. So to show you how that works, and this was actually really fun to implement. So that's how I knew this was the right choice, is that it wasn't hell. And it's these little moments like this. This is how you avoid burning the hell out. Now, don't freak out here, because this is an old blueprint. This is the Gabi's character class, which I built years ago. This is not to my current standard of quality. If I were to do this again, I would make these all into functions. And I know that it looks a bit overwhelming, but I still think this is better than the contractors, because I've actually commented things, and this is still workable. Is it ideal? No. But I didn't know how to... Like, this was a few years ago, okay? Cut me some slack. And I'm not even supposed to know programming anyway. So, don't freak out. But I did write this new function to my current quality standard. Because, if I had to do this all again, this is how I would do it. I'd make them all into self-contained functions. Now, of course, I could try and refactor all this. But it works, it's readable, it isn't a pain in the ass to use. It looks a bit overwhelming, but when you start zooming in, I can make sense of it. But to refactor all this into functions would cost time, and I don't think at the moment it's a high priority. But if it were to come to a point where something about her wall run broke or something like that, then I would consider refactoring this and cleaning it up to be even more organized. But again, there's that middle ground, You want to wash the bowl where it's clean enough, but the bowl, you don't have to go, you don't have to go like Gustavo Fring level all the time and rewash the pantry 10 times. You don't have to go that far with it. But, this is still... If this was a complete mess, though, and there was no code comments, then I'd refactor it immediately. But anyway, so this is the new function I did to control the shadow. It's just a simple trace, gets the hit result, sets position, rotation, scale. And the scale's cool, because what I can do with this method... Because do I have it here? So here's the actual texture for it here. And all it's basically doing, it casts down, and then it just moves this plane to wherever the floor is. But then, depending on how far the distance is from where the character is to the shadow, it'll scale it up and down. So that it looks like you're moving further away. And the cool thing is, because the shader I was trying to do before did that as well, but it did it in a weirder way. But this way, it's more controlled, because I can actually just give it a maximum, minimum distance value and control exactly how big and small it gets depending on how far you are. So you can see here, last week it wasn't as noticeable, but you can see now it's a lot more noticeable that the shadow is shrinking when she's jumping. And that's important, because it gives you an indicator on... Because the sacrifice I'm making with my art style is because I don't have all this RTX whatever, it's a bit harder to judge depth, and I think that's an important thing to have in this kind of game. And having a shadow that shrinks and scales with you, it's like the low fidelity version of depth perception, without having to do real-time shadows and all this stuff. And I know everyone loves real-time shadows, but I'm gonna say it, real-time shadows are a disaster for the human race. Okay, we don't need them. Baked lighting is freaking cool, and I'm tired of pretending it's not. So what I'm trying to do with everything is basically no real-time lighting ever, because it will just run better and it'll look better. But the sacrifice you make is... I mean, you could add real-time shadows to these lights for Gabi, but they don't serve... They're just aesthetic only. Whereas this shadow is aesthetic and it serves a purpose, like gameplay as well. So that's even better. The only downside with this method, as I mentioned last week, is that if you stand on a ledge, the shadow will just hover. But you know what? So does Mario's in Mario 64. And if that's good enough for Nintendo, then that's good enough for me. Because the time it would take to fix that is just not worth it, That would be a bit of a waste of time. And I also, be real, when you guys are playing this game, are you guys seriously... If you spend your time doing this sort of thing where you start standing on ledges and laughing at the implementation of the drop shadow, you're kind of you're kind of playing the game wrong at that point. You're not even meant to notice that sort of thing. So the joke's kind of on you if you decide you want to be a Redditor about it and go, oh, well, actually, if I stand on the ledge, the shadow... And it's well, yeah, so does Mario, okay? So that's fine. I don't care. If you want to laugh at that, I don't really care. That's fine. It means that I don't have to spend 2 weeks on the shadow, because this literally took an hour. It was so nice, man. So I know it's the approach I wasn't planning on doing, but I was looking at the amount of time I was spending. I'm oh man, I just want to get this finished. So I did. So that's now, I won't have to touch that ever again. And it looks like, looking at chat here, it looks like other games do that too. So, I mean, hell, if that's okay and if no one noticed it, then that's probably fine. And it's a shadow anyway. You're not even meant... If you're paying attention to that when you're standing still, you're kind of playing the game wrong. Like, you should only be paying attention to the shadow when you're airborne. If even. I reckon most people that aren't watching the streams probably won't even notice I've done that. So that's the trick as well. So the trick is with all this, because I've been trying to think, because I know that there will be things I say that probably sound contrary to each other. But the way I see it is that there's a tier of things that you have to pay super close attention to that the players will also be paying close attention to. And then there's another level, there's like second order things that are also important, but the player is probably... They're not going to be paying as close attention to those. And I think when you get to level 2, that's kind of when you can make compromises. But it's when you have the tier 1 level, when you have the first order things, like Gabi's model, that's the order where you can't compromise, I feel like. And the tricky thing of describing this idea, because literally I'm just improvising like what I think's going on, right? And I think the tricky thing with this idea is that what will be a first and second order or third order thing is not going to be the same for every game. So for something like Call of Duty, having the character models be immaculate is not going to be a first order thing because there aren't any character models. It's all first person. And for for a different kind of game, like there'll be different things that are the most important. For like Osu, they're going to have completely different things that are first order and second order things. And I think the trick is there is a certain thing you got to do when you're making a game from scratch. The challenging thing isn't even... I don't think it's even the programming stuff. It's not even any of that. It's like knowing what is a first order thing in your game. And no one can tell you that because it's your game. So you can't just like... Unless you're plagiarizing another game, which you could do. But unless you're doing that, you're going to have to like work out... A tutorial can't tell you this. Like you can't watch some... how to be a game dev in 5 steps thing and just know what the first and second order things of your game are, because like it's not how that works. Those are all original to your thing. And the tricky part, if you actually go back and watch my devlogs, you might notice the slow process of me figuring that out. And I think this is like, we're at the result now where I think it's a bit more obvious that I can more clearly recognize what is a first and second order thing. Because I think in the earlier ones, it would be really... In my earlier devlogs, the tricky part was that it was really easy to get caught on things that I thought were first-order things that actually weren't. That were actually more second-order things that I could have cheapened out a little bit on, So when I'm looking at this, the way my brain is thinking, it isn't just all the code, but I'm thinking the shadow... And the character model, I think the character model, that's definitely first order, but the shadow is probably a second order thing. And that's, you have different rules you apply to those orders. You have different levels of attention you pay to it. So like, you can think of second order, that's like a bowl you want to get cleaned. But the first order thing, that's like the scene in Better Call Saul where Gus is having Lyle wash the fryer 10 times. That's like how you treat a first order thing. But I think the mistake that's difficult to get is that you fall into the trap of thinking everything is a first order thing. And I think when I said I was going to do everything, I think what a lot of people thought was that I was going to be like that with every part of the game. And yeah, that's kind of unrealistic, of course. And I mean, I know that, you know that, but I don't think I did a good job of communicating that in that conclusion, because it's just knowing what to prioritize. I think that there's a level of that to it as well, right? Can't you project the shadow on a texture? Well, yeah, that's what I'm doing. It's literally just a texture. That's what it is. Working on a fighting game, I need to make sure my characters have clean and readable designs. Yeah, well, yeah, motion clarity and all that stuff. That sounds like it would be a first order thing for a fighting game. Well, yeah, I don't know, because I don't play a lot of fighting games. But I'd imagine, yeah, the characters themselves are definitely a first order. And the animations and the poses would be really important. But what wouldn't be important? When I say not important, I mean as important for a fighting game. I don't know, because there's a lot that's really important about fighting games. The audio has to be really good. You got to have like music that pumps you up. Have you looked into decals for the shadow? I think I did, but I didn't want to go there for this. Because I tried using decals before for something else, and they were just a pain. Like, they would Z-fight all the time, and if I was standing on a ledge like this with a decal, what I imagine would happen is that I have the same problem as I did with my first attempt, where it would project onto the wall, like beneath, and stretch, which I don't want. And then if you have it on an angle like this, I don't know enough about decals to say, but all I can say is that this works, and I'm happy with this, and I don't really care what decals do. Like, just because I've tried using them before for other things, and they were just a pain. And in terms of performance, I don't know, because I remember there was some... It might have been some marketplace scene I downloaded. I was trying to get like shipping crate models, and it had this entire scene it came with, and it had decals everywhere, and the decals were like tanking the performance like mad. And again, this was a few years ago, so I don't remember if this was the only thing with it, but I just had a skepticism with decals. I don't know, it gave me like this deep-seated skepticism for them, and I was like, these decals, man, I don't... Because they're acting like a projector, right? And I think... For the shadow, I don't know, I don't trust a projector, because I don't, if it projects on a certain angle, like a 40, 50 degree or whatever angle, I don't know how it's going to behave. I don't know how it clips it or whatever. But with the texture, because it's all controlled with my own code, I know exactly how it's going to react to everything. And that's that it'll just match the surface normal. Like, that's all it'll do, and that's all I want it to do. With a decal, I don't know what other things are going to happen with it. So there's more uncertainty. And I mean, this does the job. I'm happy with this. So I'm kind of like, I'm not even really going to entertain alternatives at this point because it's finished. And I think, you know, having it be like this, I'm okay with this. Because I mean, Gabi's foot is already like, you know, her foot is already kind of sticking out and looking weird anyway. So it's like, that's fine, man. I don't really like, I accept this as like a, you know, I mean, hell, if it's good enough for Mario, it's good enough for me. That's sort of how I think of it, like that. Decals don't like moving in real time. Oh, is that right? So yeah, because I don't know. Because I don't really use decals. So whenever there's some new thing, and there's a bigger topic here I want to get into as well. But whenever I get into some new unfamiliar territory, there's always like 10 terms of conditions that you have to know in advance, usually, right? Where it's like, if you want to use, I don't know, because I'm trying to think of some engine feature that, as an example, like, because I know UE5, it has some like new animation system or something, where it can like dynamically blend animations or whatever. I remember someone telling me about that on stream a while back, and it seemed really cool, but what you're probably not seeing is that there's probably a lot of overhead in that system, and there's a lot of ways to break it. Or even a better example. Let's say, I don't know how many... There's some 3D artists in the chat. I know there's some 3D enthusiasts here. You know, like when you try using... Let's say you've used Maya for a while or something. Or if you've used Blender for a while. Most of you probably use Blender, I'm guessing. Let's say you've used Blender for 4 years. And then all of a sudden one day you decide, I'm going to now do this one in 3ds Max. Now, when you do that, you'll realize how much you don't know about 3D modeling, because when you do something you're familiar with for long enough, at least this happens to me. I don't know if this happens to everyone else, but when I do something for long enough, you build a familiarity. And while I'm explaining this, we'll play some Project Feline. This will be my YouTube commentary section. We'll play a bit of the game. Also, I've tried adding this effect to her dash, by the way, but the material on this, it's meant to be a gradient, but the material's glitched out. Again, I'm still in the middle of material cleanup. So if you see that, just don't have a tantrum, okay? I'm working on fixing that. But as I was saying, when you work on it in something long enough, you get a familiarity, and the familiarity isn't just knowing where all the menu features are, it's knowing how the software likes being used. You know, you get a sense of like, oh, Blender likes it when I do this and this and this, and Blender doesn't like when I do this. But when you do a new tool, you don't know what that tool's preference. You don't know how that tool likes to be handled, and that's a whole process you have to like learn the hard way. I found is that you have to like make the mistakes, and then you go, oh, okay, this 3ds Max, you know, Blender likes it when I do it this way, but 3ds Max doesn't like it when I do it this way. And there's that whole oops, sorry, my mouse must have clicked on the chat there. But there's a whole game you've got there, right? And I found that when it applies to everything. Like when you go from, like with the shadow, if I want to do this with a plane in texture, I know how to use a plane in texture But a decal is a whole other thing, and that's going to have its own terms and conditions that you have to like learn how to dance around to use properly. Because if you don't know those things, there's going to be some cost that some invisible cost that you take on, which if you're lucky won't matter. But if you're unlucky, which is most of the time, like we all know that is that most of the time when you're making a game or doing anything, you are not lucky. And when that happens, you then see the unpaid cost come in. So if what you say is true here about decals, see, I don't know what how decals like to be used. I don't know how they like it. But if it's the case that they like being static and they don't like being moved, and if I use that as a drop shadow, that is like an object in the game that is constantly moving, you know, if I went in deeper, there's probably some reason why decals don't like being moved. And the question, it's like that thing where it's like the more you screw around, the more you find out. And it's like, do I want to mess around using this thing for a thing it wasn't meant for? And do I want to bet my luck? Because that's what you're doing. It's like, do I want to like put my chips in and like hope that I luck out and there's no consequences? Or is it going to be the statistical majority of times where there is some consequence to this that I am too foolish to notice immediately, that I will notice in a year when I'm doing some profiling or whatever, and I notice that, oh, what's this weird, why is my draw call count so high? And it's like, oh, it must, and then you're like trying to figure out what it is, and then maybe it's something as stupid as just, oh, I used a decal for the shadow. And again, this is all hypothetical. I'm not saying this is what will actually happen. But the thing is, I don't know. So it's like, that could be what happens. Maybe it isn't that severe. But at the end, like, do you want to risk it is the question. And if you want to actually find out if that's appropriate, do you want to put in the time to actually find that out as well? Because that's going to cost time as well. Or do you just want to like go, you know, the plane works, I'm just going to do that. And that's the kind of choice you got to make. And I think where it comes into what my previous topic there about first and second order things, I think first order things, those are the tier of things where those are worthy of that research. Because they're like important. But things that are second order things, you have to be like more discriminatory with how you apply that. Where you kind of don't want to be researching into things like that for the second order things at all, because you have to spend that effort doing it for the first order things. So that's sort of how I see it with that. But again, yeah, because I don't know, I've just had issues with decals. I don't trust them. So I trust the plane, because I know exactly what will happen with the plane. I know the worst. There's like one problem. There's literally, and this might sound like an oxymoron, but it is amazing that this only has one problem. And that's that when you stand on a ledge, you do this, which you shouldn't even be standing on ledges anyway. Like, that's unsafe and irresponsible. You shouldn't be doing it. You could fall off at any minute, you know, and that's okay. That's like a Persian flaw. I'm okay with that. But that's actually really good in game development when you have a thing and it only has one problem. Because if any of you guys have tried building something, you'll know that just having one problem is actually the best outcome ever. The worst outcome is when you have 100 problems that you don't know, and you have like 100 errors or something like that. That's, you know, so when I'm given the choice of like, I could have potentially hundreds of unknown errors or one known problem that isn't really a huge deal, it's like, yeah, I'll take the one, just the one, thanks. You know what I mean? I'll just take the one. But yeah, anyway, but that's kind of all in terms of the drop shadow and stuff. I've probably spent too much time talking about that anyway, but it works. I'm happy with it. It does the job. I can change the color of it as well if I want, but and I can change the opacity too. I've done a bit of material work as well, and that's been a lot of the rest of the progress in terms of mainly cleanup, because there's a few areas I gotta still fix. Because, you know, I don't want this to come back and bite me later where I have too many materials. You can already see in this panel, some of these are left over from the contractor that I gotta quarantine and get the hell out. So there's that I have to sort through. And then the ones that I made these new base materials for like unlit particles and that sort of thing. So I think for all the particles, I'm using this as the master, where you've just got emissive color and like opacity, and this combination has been pretty good. It literally gives me most of what I need, except in one area, and this is like the thing I still gotta work on, and this is the where was it? The jump. The only thing I got to work out, and this is the thing I've gotten some criticism on with the particles, is like they're a bit over empowering. Like they're a bit overpowering in presence in terms of their color. So for things like this, it looks fine in the editor, but when you play it, because one thing I've had people say is that the clouds look too bright. And the reason that is because they're white, right? And they're just peaking the threshold of like the bloom. And it's adding bloom to them, which is probably why it looks a bit, you know, overkill. And your solution would be to think, oh, just lower the opacity or change the color, which I can do with the shockwave, but I can't do with the clouds because the clouds are using some marketplace material. So the next thing I have to clean up, I'm probably going to spend this afternoon just fixing this up, is to, because I haven't even looked at that material yet, but I know it's probably going to be complicated because it isn't my material. It's part of the asset pack. So if we go to the clouds, if we go to where is it? Mesh data. Yeah, it's like this. And what's the master material here? Oh, that's the mesh. Sorry, my bad. Where's the material? Because I know there's functionality in here. I have to like, yeah. See, I haven't even looked at this yet, and there's quite a bit going on with how it does the alpha mask. And this is important stuff, right? Because this material gives it the ability so that when you have the jump particle, you see how the clouds fade out, but it isn't like an opacity fade out. It's like the actual fill moves to the edges of the mesh, which is sick. I like that. But that is because it's using this obscure material. So the trick is that I want to do is I want to like inject this functionality to my material, which is going to probably be my task for the afternoon, is going to be like figuring out what I can cut out of this, because some of this I know I won't need. Like this I can already see I don't think I'm going to need that. But I want to understand how this works, take the bits I need from it to recreate that effect in my own material with just the essentials of what I need. And then because of my material, it lets me also control the color. Whereas with this one, I don't think it lets you do that. This one, because of the way it's built, it's purpose built to only do this, but you can't really customize, like, I mean, maybe it looks like you've got some things here, right? But, you know, this, I don't like, because again, I'm looking at this the first time. I don't really get how it's doing it. I would rather do it in my material where I understand what's happening, and then I can control how the color's being used. That's what I want. That's what I want. So then I could do something like adding opacity, like actual opacity. So I can actually, I want to be able to do it where I can make it so that the opacity fade out still works, where it's going to the edge of the mesh. But then I can make the actual mesh like 50% opaque as well, which I don't think you can do in this. But if I do it in my one, I can make that possible. And then I could use that on a lot of things. Like every particle can just use that one material. And that's great, because if you use just one material instance for everything, it's just more performant that way. Less draw calls. So that sounds like something I should do. And it's like, it's one of those things that's kind of a pain. Like you could leave it alone. You could not touch it. But then your particles are going to be slightly too bright. And if, I mean, people have, I wouldn't worry about this normally, but people have complained about it. So it's like, all right, well, if people are already complaining, then, you know, I gotta wash the bowl more, if, you know, until the point where people aren't complaining about it. Then then that bowl is washed, I can move ahead. That's sort of the way I see it. And it's still like, it's like 90%, like it's like 99%. It's just, you gotta have like little touch where it isn't dominating the presence of the whole scene. So, whether it's opacity or the color, if I can make it a bit grayer, or even just changing the shadow color would be helpful. I don't think it lets you do that either, because what I'd like to be able to do is, you know, have some control over what color the shadow is and all that stuff, which I can't do. So if I can get that, I can then get a lot more control over just the colors of the particles, because I think that's kind of the last thing that makes it look off, is just I don't have any control over the colors really. But once I do that, then it's finished, and I can like won't have to touch it ever again, hopefully. So that's sort of that's the next game plan in terms of the particles. But everything else, and then of course this dash effect, that's the only thing as well, is that because I tried adding this gradient thing and I was just using the fog material for it, but for some reason when I exited and reopened Unreal, it now shows it as a grid. So that I'll have to fix as well. But being able to then apply like a gradient to the material to get that, because I've just got the mesh for it, so that she has this cool like shockwave looking thing when she's doing the kick. So that's kind of like, I don't know if I've got footage of that actually, because I might have footage of when it was working that I could show you. Which I might get open now because it's going to move me to my next topic, because that's kind of in terms of effects, that's everything I've sort of been cooking. Now we'll get to the second half of what else I've been trying to do. So I mentioned I was working on a new video as well, and this has been a bit of a challenge because I'm trying to do this all in DaVinci, which I don't know how to use, and it's a bit of a learning curve. Maybe a flipbook. I did try using flipbook particles for my first attempt, but there was a problem where if you like move the camera at a certain angle, then the particle it like completely flattens and it looks awful. So I've gone in deliberately, I replaced those with the 3D clouds, which are a lot more forgiving with view angles. But the trick is you got to be a bit more rigorous with the materials. So I guess that's the trade-off, but I'd rather have the 3D clouds than a flipbook. Just because a flipbook is just kind of, you know, it isn't just a matter of adding the flipbook function. You got to then make a special texture that, you know, and that's just a whole process. It looks to me like with these clouds, yes, the material is a bit of a mess, but I think if I just sat and read it for long enough, I'd understand what it was doing, and it would be quicker to just appropriate this material and not have to like author a new flipbook from scratch. You know, because doing texture work, because that's a whole other skill, and I like to reserve that for special occasions. And I think I can achieve what I want without a flipbook, because all of the things I'm already doing, because literally all I want to do is change the color. But anything like the animations, like the way the cloud animates and the way the opacity seeps to the edges, like that's all already working without a flipbook. It's just I want to consolidate the materials. I get that's a simpler way of putting it. I know I probably did a bad job explaining it, but I just want to consolidate the materials so that it isn't a mess and that I'm not using marketplace materials. That's the goal. And then, yeah, because those clouds are, you know, I could then replace the drones particles, because the enemy drones have older versions of these that I think do use a flipbook, and you can tell that it doesn't look as good. So real quick, I'll show you that if you're that curious. I think they're over here. If we go to Mr. Calder, give us a mission. So these guys, you know, they have their own little smoke particles, but it's just it's so lazy, man. Because I didn't know what I was doing. So I literally just have like a trail with the texture on it. Like, I don't know if you guys can see that in the edge of the frame there, but it's lazy as hell, man. Like Gabi's particles, you can tell that Gabi's particles have more effort put into them. So, you know, when I get all that finished, I want to go in and just re-add like her particles to the drone basically, and it'll look way better. It'll look way cooler. But yeah, because it's a 2D thing. That's the thing about it, and that's why it looks kind of weird. It's just like a 2D trail, not a 3D object. But it looks kind of lame. Let's get him out of there. So yeah. And again, I don't want to spend too long on like having to hand author flipbooks as well. Like by next week, I want it to not be thinking about particles anymore. That's the plan. Can you focus on the level design, making them look it's much more important than model extras? Well, I mean, that's the thing, because with level design, because there's priorities, right? I was doing a bit of level design stuff at the end of the year to get a workflow going, but like there's a whole plan. I can't get into the whole plan in the stream. It'll take too long to explain. But at the moment, these are on priority 1. Level design, because making more levels, I don't know if I should even get into that. There's more to it than just mindlessly hammering away in Trench Broom. I know I made it sound really easy with Trench Broom, but my breakthrough there was that I know the workflow. But just because you know the workflow doesn't mean you just know how to make levels. Like, that's not how that works, really. And it's levels, making content is like going to be quite expensive. So what I've been trying to do just behind the scenes is work out just realistically how much time and money it's going to cost to like build content with this, with the methods of Trench Broom and everything that I've been researching. But that's, I'm not ready to talk about yet, because there's more to it than just, you know, build, like, it's not like Minecraft creative mode. You gotta have fun with it, of course, but there's more to it than that. Otherwise, everyone would be a level designer, which isn't the case. But there's more to level design than just having the right tools. That is a big part of it, though. Having the right tools is good, but that isn't the end of the story. So at the moment, I have a level, and I'm just trying to get the rest of it to like sort of level out. Like there's other areas I got to level up, but it's all part of the plan. I just can't get into the entire thing yet because there's a lot to it. But in terms of other things I've been working on, so I mentioned I've been working on a video for the channel because I don't want to leave you guys hanging for 6 months because, you know, I don't want to disappear again. So it's what I've been doing this time because I have the devlog on the character model. But as I mentioned before, I'm a bit stuck on that because there's just so many technicals and it's actually like probably the most complicated topic I've ever talked about. So I've been thinking just to keep momentum going, I got to work on some video, right? So I've been working on this video in DaVinci and there's only, it's like 90% finished. There's just a few things that are holding me back, which I'll get into. But this video, it's quite casual. The production value is a lot lower and it only took like a few days to put together. And this video is about some of the questions I get asked a lot on these streams, particularly about, as I'm sure some of you in chat right now have probably asked this, and I didn't notice, about like why I'm using Unreal 4 and not like Unreal 5. And that's basically what this video is going to be about, because I literally every week I get asked it. So I thought I'd actually make it into a video finally, and instead of having an unscripted ramble, I've got a bit more. I've actually thought about it more, and I've actually found some more interesting reasons that I didn't actually realize I was doing of why I'm not doing it. So I've got some footage that I've just edited to get it together of gameplay of Gabi and AAA games that use Unreal 5. I've just chucked in as examples. The trick is that I've got a few scenes here that have images. And this is kind of what made me realize why Adobe Premiere is the industry standard editing tool. Because editing images and cropping and scaling in DaVinci is lame. And it's really difficult. Because you might think, oh, well, there's probably like a transform gizmo or something, right? And yes, there is, but it doesn't work the way I want it to. Because the way Adobe's ones works is actually really cool. But the way that DaVinci's one works is a pain. And I don't even remember how to open... I don't even remember where the thing was for it. There's meant to be a whole panel on the side here, but it's not showing for some reason. Where is it? See, I can't even, oh, it might be here. Yeah, there we go. So you've got this little transform gizmo and it looks simple enough, right? But I have this big screenshot of a forum that I want to zoom in on. And if you guys have seen my videos, you'll know that I'll do this from time to time where I'll have a shot of like a web page scrolling through. Now, if I want to crop to the part I want, I physically can't do it in DaVinci for some reason. And I don't know why. But it's just the way it works, and I don't like it. So I can zoom in so that you can actually see what's going on here, right? But if I want to move to the top of the page, I have to like move this, but it has like a maximum for some reason, and I can't get to the top unless I zoom out. But then if I zoom out, it's like there's this empty space on the sides. And all I want to do is have it zoomed in like this and have it at the top of the page. But I don't know, man, like, see, this is why, like, it's frustrating. Because it's like, in Premiere, I know how to do this. It's so easy in Premiere. But DaVinci, like, there's some good things about DaVinci. The footage, importing footage is pretty quick. Playback is really smooth. It's so responsive, and it's really awesome. But this transform tool is just crazy, dude. Like, I don't know who made this way, but this is, like, why? Why would you not let it? Why would you put a cap on this number? I just don't get it. So what I think is going on, because I don't want to just, you know, angry man yells at cloud with it. What I think is happening, I've tried to do a bit of research on how to actually crop things, because there's other things as well, is that when I do cropping and zooming like this in Premiere, I use a special transform modifier that has a special option on it that adds motion blur to it. And it might not seem like a big deal, but I like having that in the video because it sort of makes it look, I don't know, it makes the motion and zooming easier on the eyes. And that's important, you know, because if you're watching the video on like a phone screen at night, you got to think about these things. You know, you don't want to like hurt people's eyes with all your cropping and zooming or whatever. So I like having a bit of blur for those things, and I have a little vignette on it as well. I don't know how to add those in DaVinci. I've got no clue how you're meant to do it here. But whatever it is, it's way more complicated than Premiere. Because with Premiere, you literally just drag on an effect layer and it does it and it just works. But DaVinci doesn't do it that way. It has some completely different way of doing it. from what I've been able to tell, the way DaVinci likes things being done is that it doesn't use effect layers at all. It uses like a completely different system with nodes, which, like, the only research I've done is knowing that it uses nodes, but I have no idea how to use those or like whatever the best practice is. And it's like an entirely different interface. So I think if I click on this button, I think it shows you like yeah. So it gives you this thing. I have no idea what the hell I'm looking at here. It looks like a Blender shader graph, but I just want to edit a video, okay? I don't want to have a whole Blender shader graph just to edit video. So it's like, it's just been tricky because this has tempted me to go back to Premiere because I know how to do this in Premiere without wasting like 4 hours on it. But if I stick with Premiere, it's going to cost me in the long term because they keep raising the prices like every year and it's annoying. So it's like one of those difficult moments where it's like, do I want to keep getting exploited by Adobe and do it the way I know how to do it? Or do I want to suffer in the short term and learn a completely new workflow and like not have to pay for editing software for the rest of my life? And that's the short term versus long term thing, right? So I'm trying to push through it. I won't lie, it's frustrating as hell because I just want to do a zoom, which shouldn't be that complicated. But for whatever reason, DaVinci has this ultra specific way it wants you to do it that I disagree with. But I either capitulate and learn their way, or I have to go back to paying like $600 a year for Adobe. So that's the thing. And it's been frustrating. I'm not going to lie. It's been frustrating because if I had this in Premiere, it'd be finished by now. But, you know, there's the cost, right? So I'm trying to push through it and not just throw my monitor out the window. I'm sure once I get into it, it shouldn't be that hard, I hope. It's just because I'm unfamiliar, right? So it's, you know, I've been trying to like, it's just that learning curve of doing something for the first time that it's just frustrating just to do something as simple as zooming. And it's just a bit frustrating, right? But I feel like if I try to convert to any editing software, that would happen. I'm assuming you know of the node system. Well, see, no, I don't. Like, literally, I've never looked at this before. I have no idea what I'm looking at. I have no idea what this does. So part of my challenge over the weekend is going to be trying to learn what the hell this is. Because look, when I look at node editors, I think of programming and Blender. I don't, like, me with node editors and like video editing, like those worlds have never collided in my head before. So it's a bit of, I don't know, maybe editing actually is that hard. I don't know. Because like editing has always, because I've always used things like Premiere and before that Windows Movie Maker or something. And I've been doing editing since I was a child. So I guess like video editing for me never seemed like a skill. It was kind of just like something everyone knows how to do. But then I start using this and I realize that, oh, actually editing is kind of, maybe that actually is a skill after all. Like, I guess that's why they have professional editors and stuff. Because I just assumed everyone knew how to like do this stuff, but then you start doing things that are zooms in a foreign software, and it's like, oh, actually, this isn't just a thing. You know, there's a whole procedure to this. That's like the next level up. So it's a bit tricky like that. But I'm sure. Look, I'm frustrated at it, but I'm sure I can figure it out somehow. It's just going to be a matter of more headbanging and persistence. But I mean, it shouldn't be that hard, right? That's what I'd hope for. DaVinci is definitely used for VFX stuff. Well, yeah, I mean, because that's the thing, because the thing that I do, I don't consider VFX. Can't you just use keyframes for zooming? Well, no. See, that's why I'm frustrated, is that, no, you can't do that. Because, like I showed, firstly, you can place keyframes, but it doesn't show you where the keyframes are, which is annoying. It basically defeats the whole purpose of keyframing. And also, I can't get it to the zoom to the point I want it, which also defeats the point. So if I reset this real quick, because I want to zoom into the top, I don't know if you guys can see with the viewport here. I'll single it out. So here's the viewport. I have this big web page screenshot, and I want to zoom to the top. And if I do that, because first thing I got to zoom in because it's a high. First of all, this also having it zoomed out is not how Premiere does it. When you import an image in Premiere, it doesn't shrink it. It actually just, it does it in pixel size, which I like. Because in Premiere, if you drag in like because this is a 1080p screenshot, right? And this is a 1080p project. And if this was in Premiere, if I was to drag this in, it would already be taking up the full frame because it's just doing it in pixels. But in Premiere, it does it in %, which, like, I don't know. There's probably a reason, but I don't work that way. That's not how I do it. As you see here how it says zoom, it says 1. Like 1, I think it's in percentage. But in Premiere, it doesn't do it in zoom. It does it in size, in pixels. And I like working in pixels because all of my footage is done where I know the pixel values of it. So here I got to zoom all the way in to some arbitrary value, like to get the edges to touch the edges there. See, this is annoying because it's like 44.5 whatever. I don't even like, because if we zoom in, we then got to check if it's actually touching the edges or if there's like a pixel gap or whatever. Whereas in Premiere, because I know the pixel values, I know how wide to make it so that it won't have like clipped pixels on the edges. But in DaVinci, it doesn't do it in pixels or, you know, whatever. And then, anyway, so that's just the zoom. Let's say I want to then go to the very top of this image. If I then move this, I can't go higher than this value for some reason. It's like cropped to this value, which is not the top of the image. And it's like, I want to have it at the top of the page, but the highest I can go is like still halfway through it. And then the only way to then see the top is then if you zoom out again, like this. Oh, sorry, I was going the other way. You got to go minus. So if you then zoom out, if you zoom out enough, you'll then be able to see the top, but then you've got these black bars on the side. And like, look, I don't know, maybe this is the wrong way of doing it, but this Premiere's way of doing it is so much more sensible because like literally I could solve this in like 30 seconds in Premiere of like having it do this. All you have to do is literally type in the pixel value of the width of the image, the scale. Like I can literally imagine it in my head doing it in like 20 seconds. But in DaVinci, it's like I don't even understand why it's cropping it at this value. Like I don't get why it's doing that. So what I've in my little adventure trying to work this out, what I have come to find is that doing crops like this and that sort of thing and having animated things, apparently that's considered motion graphics, which, look, like maybe that's what I've been doing this whole time. To me, it's just editing. I don't really like motion graphics. To me is doing things like Marvel CGI stuff, which I don't know how to do. But I think the way DaVinci wants you to do it is that if you're doing anything that's more advanced than just putting clips in, it wants you to use this node interface, and you have to now learn motion graphics to do it. And I mean, I guess I can kind of see that, right? Like it kind of, I guess animating keyframes is motion graphics, I guess. But see, to me, it's just editing. Like I don't see that as a separate skill because in Premiere, it's so easy. It's so consolidated and coupled that it's kind of, you don't even really need to learn a different, because it's in the same interface in Premiere. Because in Premiere, you don't have this whole fancy node graph thing. Because the interface is entirely different here. But in Premiere, you can do it all in this, and you literally you animate it all through these properties, and it's like super intuitive. Now with the keyframing, yes, you can add keyframes, but where's the graph? There's no graph. Because when you do this in Premiere, it has this whole thing on the side that shows you a whole graph, and you can adjust the curves and all this stuff. But I don't see a graph. So I can add a keyframe, and then I just have to memorize where the keyframe is, and I can add another one, and I can move it, but there's no graph. So it's like, I'm guessing what you have to do is you have to do it in here. That's what I'm assuming, that's probably what it is. But I don't know, it's just, in Premiere, it's just so much simpler. Like, you don't have to learn motion graphics and all this other stuff. You literally, just a normal editor could just do animation, and it's like easy. So I can kind of see now, it's like the weird thing where I can kind of see now why Premiere is the industry standard tool. And I get why it's expensive, because I guess you are paying for something after all, and you're paying for the intuitive factor where it all just makes sense. So I don't know, man. Like, I have faith that I have enough brain cells to work this out. It's just annoying, you know? Because this was meant to be a low effort video, and it was meant to be a simple video. It wasn't meant to like take, you know, this long. It's just that that's the price of entry for learning a new software. I gotta learn how DaVinci wants to be used. And I have to unlearn all of my Premiere intuition and relearn a whole new way of editing of how DaVinci wants me to do it. And that is that isn't DaVinci's fault. That's just kind of what happens when you learn new software in general. And ironically, this is what this whole video is actually about. Because the whole point of the video is like, why I don't upgrade to Unreal 5. And part of the reason is because when you upgrade software and they change things, it interferes with the familiarity of your workflow. And that costs. And as I'm funny enough, I'm facing the consequences of my own points by making the video itself. So it's kind of funny. It's kind of funny. So it's kind of weird like that, isn't it? But yeah, there's a certain, that's the thing though, is that there's like, I think there are times to upgrade software and to move software and to change tools, but there's always going to be this cost when you do it. And this whole thing, because I know a similar scenario like this would happen if I tried to upgrade my engine. And in this, I won't say it because you'll know when I release the video, I'll explain it. It's all in the voiceover here. But yeah, it's like a constant, like I'm very much, I like being familiar with things and I like sticking to just one tool usually. So that's why I'm like extra frustrated with this. It's like poetry, it rhymes. Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. Did you click on the diamond under the clip and name it? It shows the graph. Does it now? What diamond? What diamond under the clip? Do I have to zoom in? Oh, that's tiny. Okay, well now we've at least got a keyframe. See, because in Premiere, it's huge. And you get to see the curves and everything, and it's beautiful. But look at this little tiny guy. Look at this little guy here. It's a tiny little keyframe editor. Does it show multiple properties at a time? No, it doesn't, I don't think. It only, yeah, because I've now just put in more keyframes on the other properties like this. And it doesn't show, it only shows them all on one track too. So, I mean, look, I don't like that, man. I don't like this. See, in Premiere, it shows, it like compartmentalizes it and it gives you so much room. But look at this little thing. This is a tiny, like I gotta squint to look at this tiny little keyframe editor. So I don't know, man, like it's just something I'm gonna have to put up with. I've accepted that this is the price of like leaving Adobe. It's just annoying, you know? It's just, I hate it, but it's probably, hopefully a short-term thing. But I will say I'm glad I started working on this video editing first and not the devlog, because the devlog is going to need a lot of editing like this. So if I can't even make a simple video with just crops and zooms, doing it the right way, if I can't even do that in DaVinci, then I'd be completely ill-prepared to handle a devlog. So that's kind of why I'm glad I at least started doing this one, to get a handle on what I'm going to be in for if I try to edit anything more complicated, because the devlog is going to have like, you know, model screenshots coming in on screen, slideshows. There's going to have to be a lot of like keyframed things in it, which I know how to do in Premiere very easily. But, you know, like I'm really not familiar with how they want me to do it here. So I don't know. I'm like tempted to go back to Premiere, but I don't know, because I don't want it. It's just time, right? Like it's going to cost time to learn this. It's a question of like, do I want to spend the time now or not, is the question. So that's the, I don't know, it's just been something I've been kind of flustered on, but I guess I'll have to just put up with it and work it out. Hopefully, I mean, it can't be that complicated, right? If like, it's probably just because it's unfamiliar. I'm sure there's probably some way to do it, but yeah, that's just my rant on DaVinci. Look, there's a lot I like about it. It's smooth. I like that it's way faster than Premiere in terms of playback. So I'm not trying to completely dump on it here, but it's just like, I just wish it did things the way Premiere did things. That's the only thing. Yeah. There's only one solution. Oh, well, look, man, I've been trying to, I know everyone says it's the morally, ethically correct way to do it, but I don't know, man, because there's dangers with that. You know, sailing the seas is not always the best choice when you have a business to run, because it's very easy to download the wrong crack and have your entire system compromised, and that's not something I want to risk, because I'm not an experienced enough pirate to know what I'm doing. I don't know how to sail, let's just say. It's a little agonizing how far behind the video. Oh, is it? How far the video is from chat? Well, I don't, maybe it's just my internet, because again, I'm in Australia. We don't have amazing internet in this country. But yeah, with all due respect, it's been 5 years and you've made 3 levels. You should really prioritize levels. Well, look, I've thought about that a lot, and there's more to a game than just level content. And that's kind of, if you've been paying attention to the videos, you'll kind of know sort of what's going on with that, really. Because there's a lot... can I explain this simply? I'm not sure if I can explain it in a simple way. But if you're just judging it on years of times and level content, that's kind of a flawed... That's not really the way you should be looking at it, because Cyberpunk, it's an open world, that's just one level, right? And that took how long? So there's that, and there's also like the quality and how the levels have been made. Technically, there's probably been like 15 levels, but like 10 of them have been thrown in the bin. So it's a bit misleading to say there's only been 3 levels made in that much time, because you got to remember that time is also learning how to be a level designer, right? Now, because like that time scale would sound bad if you were an expert and you'd worked in AAA, which isn't me. But if you were one of those guys that had like worked at Blizzard for 7 years or whatever, and you knew how to do everything, then yeah, you could probably do it quicker and you would know how to do it already. But, not everyone has like an industry background that has like done all that stuff, right? I'm just coming at it from an average guy that hasn't really done anything, that's wanting to do this. And, that requires, you can't just chuck out things. You can't just like, I made 5 levels in 2 days type stuff. You got to be more thoughtful, because if you go at it with that attitude of just churning out levels quantity and having 100 of them, like that is like, that's a recipe for creating slop. And it's, you're going to have bad levels. So part of the reason why I've thrown out a lot of mine is because I know they were bad levels. And I mean, you've seen them. I mean, I'm sure some of you guys have probably seen them. If you really want to go into that, we can. If we look at some of the ones that are in here, because it isn't just about like because level design is actually really complicated. There's more to it than just. Because that's the thing I get as well. I get a lot of people asking, why don't you just make a level editor and have the community do it? 2 problems with that. Firstly, creating a level editor is not just something you do. You can't just make a level editor. Like, that is insanely a lot of work, dude. That's insane amount of work to do that. And also, if you've played any hobbyist games, you'll realize how little the general public knows about level design. So relying on like free labor to do level design is a recipe to getting bad levels too. And that's not an insult. I'm not trying to say that, like, I'm not trying to do that as a slight. I'm just saying that if I do that and just let anyone make levels, I'm going to get blamed at the end of the day if it isn't up to par. As we've seen, like when I tried to get someone else doing levels in that video and it did bad, guess who everyone blamed? They blamed me. And it's like, well, if it's all going to be my fault, if my name's on it and everything is my fault, then I have to hold a certain standard. And it means not just letting anyone do it. And it means having a procedure and a way to do it. And that takes time to develop a sense on what is good level design and what is not good level design. It takes time to do it. And even if you make 100 levels, if you're doing it mindlessly, you aren't going to learn it. And that's kind of the main trick. And I've also been doing way more than just level design on the game as well. So that's another thing to keep in mind. And, that hasn't all been full-time work, because I also have a YouTube channel to run. And, when I started this, I was, I had like a day job and everything. So there's all of those things as well. But if we go and look at some of the other levels, I think I still have some of them in here. Because I think a lot of people have actually forgotten the amount of levels we've thrown out. I'm just trying to remember how to spell it. There we go. I don't know if you guys remember something, because we've made like a lot. It's quite a bit. But there was this level we made. This was probably the most expensive one for when we were doing the Screen Australia demo. And I know everyone was really impressed by this one. But now that I actually... Because that's what that 5 years does, right? Because when I was in year 1, I had no idea. I had no idea how to even think about starting to make a level. And this one I'm about to open, see, it's taking this... That's how you know it's bad, is that it's already taking so long to open. because this wasn't built well, and we'll dissect it. We'll dissect it, because this is the kind of the stuff I'm about to get into. This is the stuff. This is the value you can wring out of actually spending time on things. This is what happens when you actually spend time and not rush it. You get a certain intuition and insight that does take time to develop. It isn't something you just develop in a few weeks. You know, if you want it to be good, unless your standards are on the floor, then that's fine. But you got to have higher standards. Like the swine wave, next should be show curves. All right, well, yeah, I'll do more DaVinci research off stream. I don't want to annoy you guys with my frustrations with DaVinci, but I'm sure I'll work it out. Procedurals for level editing is the way to go. See, I disagree, because the yeah, I disagree with that, actually, and we'll get into a bit of that. Yeah, AJ, why don't you just make a level editor from scratch? Yeah, it's that easy. I know. Dude, to give you an idea, if making a level editor was that easy, Unreal would have one. Okay? And anyone that's tried using Unreal, we all know this, right? That Unreal's level editor is bad. Okay? We all know this, right? Once you've used something like Trench Broom, you realize how far behind everything else is. And you go, wait a minute, Epic Games is worth how much money? How much Epic Games net worth? Let's have a look. What's their stock price of Epic Games? $32 billion. And they like, Quake 1 has a better level editor than Unreal 5. And these guys are worth billions, dude. Like, that just goes to show you that making a good level editor is not... Like, I know people think that's the solution, but that would take like 2 years to do, just the level editor, and then by the end you still have no levels. So that's kind of the thing, right? And then let's say, oh, well, let's outsource that to the community and not pay them. You get what you pay for them, because yes, it's fun. I know that for the community's point of view, it looks fun, and you go, oh, cool, I get to make levels. But because there's no incentive for you, you're like, yes, you would have fun making levels. But that doesn't mean your work will be high quality, because making high quality work isn't fun. And that's why I don't trust people that just want to help for free, because if you really knew what you were getting involved in, you wouldn't offer to do it for free, because this isn't fun. This is work. And if it's fun if you don't care and you have no standards, then it's fun. But if you want to do it to a high quality, to a timeless level, that is hell, okay? And that's hell I'm okay with doing, because I have my own little goals and my own little thing of why I want to do it. I have my own mission that I'm following, and the suffering makes it worth it for me. But I don't know what, like, for someone that's just casually watching, you should be putting in effort to other things that aren't just stuff you watch on YouTube. Like, you should be putting that effort into your own thing, I think, because helping me doesn't get you anything. So anyway, there's all that. But let's open the... I don't know if any of you guys even remember this level. How many of you actually remember this? Does anyone here remember this? That's because Unreal is a film engine, not a game engine. Well, I think it's certainly heading in that direction. I think it's still a games engine, but it's just... I think people are realizing that there's a difference between a level editor and a game engine. And I think with Source and Hammer or whatever... and the id Tech or whatever, that is like such a good engine that it also has a level editor. But I think those are not one and the same. It's just that is such an exceptional case that they are one and the same in that case. But anyway, yeah, some of you, like 3 of you remember this level. So this cost about how much time? I'm trying to remember. Well, this cost probably like months of trial and error of like knowing even what to start with, and then like getting the assets together, building it, and even like you can see how laggy the viewport is too when I'm here just like moving around. What's the FPS? Does it show the FPS? Yeah, 30 frames a second. So yeah, so there's that. But you know, it's because I know some of you might look at this and think it's good. Raise your hand if you think this looks good, right? I'm sure there's probably some of you that are impressed by this because it's all detailed. But if you actually know level design a bit, which this is what my years of time studying and trying to prepare for this has led me to, is that you have to get an eye. That's what you need. You have to have an eye for what's good. And you can't just get that week one. That's not how that works. And I do think people forget that I came from nowhere. Like, I don't have an industry background. I don't have any of that. I came in completely blind. I had no eye going in. And most people will get that eye at university, which I didn't do. I'm getting the eye on the job. So with the eye, this is the trial and error that I've like gone through to like know what's good and what isn't. And when I look at this now, at the time, I also thought it was impressive. But if you look around, it's like nothing really makes sense. Like, why is this here? Why is that there? Why is there so many colors? Why are the things laid out in this way? There isn't really any reason to it. It's just random. And this is why I was going to say before, I don't agree with procedural, because procedural is random. And just using random whatever is like not good enough unless you really don't care. But with this, you know, there's a quote from like the Halo devs, the original Halo devs, that said, you know, when they're designing their multiplayer maps, it's got to be fun for the 100th and 200th and 1000th time you play it. And the strategy, and part of the level design strategy as well, and if you've been watching my devlogs, you'll know what this is, because it isn't just about knowing how to put meshes together. That's like the easy part. The hard bit is knowing why to put meshes where, and the methodology, and like how it all comes into the playtime and everything. Now, the reason why this was bad is because this was made during a period where I was way too insecure about playtime. And I like we filled this with just junk distractions. Like, that's what this is. There's no real design happening. It's just overwhelming detail to distract you from how bad the level design is. And it's just, that's all this is. That's why they have different colored lights. And that's why, like, because I mean, I look at this now and I see that this is kind of ridiculous. But at the time I thought, oh, it's cool. We got orange lights here and we got purple lights here and we got so much props. We got scratches on the thing. We got all this. But this is all junk distraction to distract you from how bad the level design is. That's what this really is. And this is not going to hold up. No one is going to want to replay this level. Like, and I know this because I've played this more. I'm the only one that's played this more than anyone else. I think I've had maybe 2 people play this. And I could tell when they played it that they didn't like it, but they weren't brave enough to tell me that it was bad. But I knew it was bad because they didn't want to play it again. They just played it once and they said, oh, cool. And that's when, like, I had the big arrow in my heart, you know, it hurt. And I was just like, oh man, I know they aren't telling me, but I know this sucks, because if it was that good, they'd play it again. And that's, if you're making a game, like, that's, people don't want to accept that. Because that's the danger when you get people you know to play test stuff for you, is that unless you have because you have to be your own critic. If you rely on everyone else to tell you these, you are going to not want to think these thoughts, and you're going to want to hide yourself in the safety of, oh, well, my friends liked it, it must be good. But that is how you sabotage yourself. You don't want to be thinking those things. You want to let in the bad voices and tell you what's going wrong with things. And I know it's scary to do, but it pushes you to greatness when you do that. And that's why, and that takes time though. That's the thing, is that people don't come out of the womb knowing how to self-analyze their work and knowing how to design levels and like knowing what is good design. And there's the visual and there's the design aspect as well, which you got to remember. And that's the tricky thing, is that when people just start doing things, and this is the mistake that this level represents, is that the visuals are overcompensating. And that's the thing, when you aren't paying attention to your own voice of like your criticism in your head, you start coping with like covering it up with other things, like all the like these ugly vines. Like, what purpose is this serving? This looks disgusting. Like, why is this here? You can tell. I think if anyone that's got an art background here can probably, like, I don't know the verbiage because I don't have like a high art background, but any high art people in here will know the verbiage of what I'm trying to talk about. You'll look at like, even just looking at this, where the hell is your eye going? My eye is going all over the place. And the reason that is because this wasn't built thoughtfully. It was built completely randomly with procedural tools like these crates. Someone didn't stack these crates by hand. This is all just done procedurally. But it's not sensible. It's just, you know, it's just clutter. It's just greebly clutter detail. And that doesn't hold up, because you will play it once and be amazed and forget about it. And the trick is that because I've had a complete attitude shift with my levels since then, which is, this is going to come in a devlog later, but seeing as we're on the topic, I'll talk about it just quickly here. The attitude shift is that I've had which again, this takes time to have this attitude. People just don't have this attitude by default, which is why so many games suck now. Because you have to be extremely critical and look at it and think about what's actually happening in the frame. And I think that's why I'm kind of regressing to older technology. It's incoherent. That's exactly right, AJ. It's incoherent. None of this makes sense. And it's boring. And when something doesn't make sense, it's boring. You can't replay it and get a mastery of it, because I know, because I've done enough bad levels to know what a good level should do. And what should be happening is when you replay this each time, you should be noticing new tricks. When you go through and play, I don't even know if it's going to let me play. I don't know if it'll actually work. We'll see. Because I can sit here and say, okay, it still actually spawns and lets me work. But the performance is terrible on this, by the way, because there's so many overused materials. Like, dude, look at this. Look how detailed this is. Why the hell does that need to be so detailed? It doesn't make any sense. But anyway, I'll refrain from ranting too much on this. But if I'm sitting here playing around, like, I'm not even having fun doing this, dude. Like, I want to, like, exit out of this as quick as possible. Because, yes, the collectibles kind of distract you, right? But, that's a crutch. Like, using collectibles as breadcrumbs is not design. That's just a crutch. It's to give you, like, a dopamine trail. It's like Boo from Monsters, Inc. being, like, fed Cheerios. Like, that's all this is. This isn't actual design. This is just following Cheerios. And that's not good enough, because once you do it the first time, it's the same every time. And there's no novelty. There's no value in replaying this level. And, like, that compounds... It sounds like a small thing, but it compounds over the long term into a mediocre game. And that has to be probably the worst outcome ever. And you might think, well, wouldn't a bad game be worse? I disagree. I think actually having a bad game is better than a mediocre game. Because at least people notice a bad game. When you have a game that's bad, it's at least funny, right? Like, you go, oh man, this is terrible. It's so funny how bad this is. But if you have a game that's just average, it's actually so forgettable that people won't even make fun of it. It's just so average, it's not even worth teasing. And I think that is like apathy. It's like worse than hatred, right? And that's like the worst, that's purgatory. That's the worst outcome you could ever have for anything, is when it's so average that no one even wants to, like, criticize it. And this... when you're doing things not thoughtfully, when you're just chucking stuff in, kit bashing. That's what this is, by the way, and I hate this word, freaking kit bashing. I hate this practice, dude. The entire industry has, like, gaslight everyone to thinking that this is fine, but it's not, okay? Because look, like, I don't know, does this look fun to you guys? Like, does this look fun? I'm not having fun playing this right now. I'm gonna tell you right now, I'm gonna be straight up. The only thing that's doing it for me is Gabi's flips. But that's also, like, yes, that's nice, but if you took that out, the level itself is, like, doing none of the lifting. And, yeah, like, as Crimson, it's the difference between Sonic 06 and Sonic Forces. Yeah, precisely. You know, because Sonic 06, that was bad, but it was, like, it had a legacy. And actually, Sonic 06's level design is really good. You know, I think a lot of people actually it's probably one of the most misunderstood games of our generation, I think. The level design in that game is really good, actually. It's just, there are little tiny things holding that game back. But Sonic Forces is so painfully average that it has, like, in 20 years from now, no one is going to remember Sonic Forces. But it's been, how many years has it been since 2006, and people are still talking about Sonic 06, right? Like, if I had the choice... because success, you know, that's a luxury, right? Success, not everyone gets to have success. And I know that for me, that maybe I'm lucky enough, and maybe it'll happen. But I'm willing to accept that it won't. But if I had the choice, I'd rather be a Sonic 06 than a Sonic Forces. Because at least people remember Sonic 06, right? At least that leaves an impact. And it says something. But Sonic Forces is so soulless, it just doesn't, like... I can't even remember a single distinctive thing about it. It's just so painfully average. So that's the middle trap. You can either start off being really terrible, and then there's the big chasm in the middle of mediocrity. And then if you get lucky, you can, like, work your way through to, like, exceptionalism. I think that's sort of how it works. But that, you can't do that in a year. That takes a long time. So, you know, I'm not really too worried about how long things take because, you know, that's the price. And that's like, whatever, you know, I'm doing the best I can with it. But in that time, I've, you know, because if I had only done this level and only spent 6 months, that isn't enough time to understand why this is bad. That's what I'm trying to say. Like, all the insights I'm having here about how all of this is random, how it's using too many materials, how it's using too many colors, how it's using too much specular, how it's all of those things. Those are things that those years of time have developed. Like, I can now know how to spot those. That's what that time gets you, is that with enough, I mean, it's really not even time, it's experience. That's what that is. And when you fail enough times, you look at it and now you can understand like what's wrong. So, you know, and yeah, like Salty says, those years are going to pass anyway. You might as well use it. The time will pass anyway. So, you know, and that's kind of what the point of my last video was that I was trying to get at as well, is that I think there is this, look, I can kind of get it from a player's point of view on why they want everything immediately. Like, I want to play it now, God damn it. Like, I get that, right? You know, it's been a while since I've been hyped for a game, but I can kind of relate, you know, when you want something to come out. But we all know, I think what's an experience that's more, that you should be more paying attention to, is the experience when you've had that hype, it comes out and it's a huge disappointment. We've all had that, right? We've all had that happen. See, for me, when a game comes out and it's good, I don't remember how long I waited. I don't even remember that because I'm there playing and enjoying the game. Like, the whole being impatient phase of waiting for it to come out, like, you don't remember that. But what you do remember is when you're let down. And usually a game will let you down if the developers are self-conscious about getting it out the door. That's why Sonic 06 failed, is that they rushed the hell out of it. They didn't budge their Christmas deadline and a bunch of other circumstances. Because I've studied Sonic 06 quite intensively. I know I don't like to talk about it much, but I have studied the hell out of Sonic 06, okay? Because that's also what I spend time doing. Because you don't just go in and start making stuff. You have to also be not blind. And I have spent a lot of time like studying people that have come before, other developers that have come before that have failed the same ways I have. And when you start looking in detail at what happens, you notice patterns. And with Sonic 06, it's the pattern of they rushed it. They didn't budge on like anything. And then they also cut the team in half and the director left. And sure, what I'm doing is probably looks crazy, but I've artfully maneuvered my way out of having the same problems that Sonic Team would have. Because I can't split my team in half. And I don't have Sega stakeholders breathing down my neck either. Sure, I have other problems, like I have no funding, for instance. That's a problem. But that's something I'd rather be poor than be under the circumstances that Sonic Team were under, and they ship a game that gets teased for 15 years after it launches. Like, that's, you gotta like artfully choose what poison you'll have, because you don't get to not choose it. You have to suffer somehow. So for me, it's like, you know, I've looked at what happened to them and I've gone, is that the road I want to go down? Do I want to be the guy that's going to stress over deadlines so much to the point where I get a Sonic 06 on my hands? Because that's ultimately why that happened. And, you know, you can't really do, and in their situation, that's all that could have happened. Like, there wasn't any other way that could have not happened because of the circumstances. So it's like, there's a lot to this stuff. But in terms of like the level design, they did do a good job. It's just they got everything else wrong. So at the moment, I'm at the stage where I think I've got everything else sort of like, I'm getting everything else developed in place so that I don't have the janky movement of that 06 would have. But because, you know, the next stage is then getting on the levels. And I think with Sonic Team, it seems a lot like if they had an extra year, they could have done that sort of first order stuff to get, because a lot of the problems are just with the character movement, right? Like, it's just that mainly. Just the character glitching out. But the actual environments are really well done. So it's sort of the opposite thing. I've sort of got the opposite thing where the environments are a bit underdeveloped, but everything else is doing pretty good. But then there's the whole thing as well, where for them, that team has also made like 10 Sonic games before. So they didn't have to go through that whole period that I needed where I had to even figure out what my mechanics were, because I'm not working with an established IP. So there's all that as well. So we had the whole phase where, because this isn't the only level, we had this is just one. There was probably like dozens more that we've had to throw out. Like the original lab, that all had to get thrown out. Which I've shown this one before. And now the director went to prison. Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, Yuji Naka got arrested. Yeah, that was really funny. So yeah. So there's all that as well. But it's, you know, it's to tie it back, because I know I'm rambling a bit here, but it's I look at time differently. I don't think time is like, I don't know, because I've just noticed a pattern where every developer that obsesses over getting things done as quick as possible, they always fail. I've noticed that. That's happened with Cyberpunk, it happened with Sonic 06, it happened with even people I personally know. That's happened to them, and that was the same attitude of, I gotta get it out now, and they screw themselves over. Like I've just seen it happen so often. So I think the whole like, I get people are impatient, but like, this is just short-term discomfort. You're not gonna, in a few years' time, you're not gonna care about having like that is not gonna, you're not gonna remember the pain of waiting. That's what I think will happen. And I'd much rather wait and give you something good than release it immediately and like it's mediocre, because you will remember that. You will, and it's gonna be like, man, this sucks. And that's like the if that's the impression that your audience gets, then you failed your job, because that's like the whole point of it, is to like give people something fun to do in their free time. And if the best you have is to disappoint them, then you failed. So it's like, I don't care how long, it's just, that's the thing you got to avoid. But it's easier than it sounds. I mean, sorry, it's harder than it sounds. Everyone thinks it's so easy, but it's quite hard. Anyway, so this was another level that, again, this took, how long did this one take? I don't even remember anymore, but whatever. Look, I learned important things from this one, but you can, you know, when you look at it with a new set of eyes and you know what to look for, you can see that this won't hold up either, because it's just visually cluttered as hell and there's no art direction going on. And then some of the other experiments, there was another one we did with terrain. I don't think I've actually shown this one. Yeah, give it a sec to open. Yuji Naka did yeah, it was like no, it was inside. I thought it was insider trading or something. It was something like that where they were doing insider trading, if I remember. But I don't know. I don't really pay that much attention to what Yuji Naka's doing nowadays. Because yeah, what was the last game he did? It was like, what? Balan Wonderworld or something. Like, yeah. Lagoon, so speaking of Sonic, I just finished playing Sonic Frontiers yesterday, and I have now moved on to Sonic X Shadow. Cool, okay, because like, I haven't really been paying much attention to Sonic lately. I hope those, because what is it? The Sonic, isn't that just like a remaster of Sonic Generations? I think that's what it is, right? I didn't, because I saw a poster for it, and I'm like, I don't understand what this is, but it looked like a Sonic Generation remaster. I don't know. Balan Wonderworld feels like Sonic Forces in the sense of how mediocre it was. I mean, yeah, because I'm like, you know, in 20 years, who's going to remember Balan Wonderworld, right? And that's, you know, there's probably, like, I'd be really curious to dig behind what happened in the development of that game, because there's probably more to it than we think. But that's kind of what happens when you don't care. And yes, he finished it, right? He shipped. And that's kind of the thing where I think a lot of people in the industry think that shipping is good enough. Like, as long as you, like, real artists ship, that's like the phrase I hear all the time. And I've met real artists that have shipped, and they shipped junk. So who cares, right? Like, just because you ship something doesn't make you a real artist. I don't know where this idea came from, that just because you release something, you're a real artist. Because you look on itch.io, are all those people real artists just because they uploaded a game jam game to itch.io? I've done that. Doesn't make me a real artist. I know it's bad. Like, yes, I've put a game up there. It doesn't mean it's good. It doesn't mean it's an artful game. It just means I've shipped it. And even that's kind of a loose term. I think everyone kind of overuses that term now, because you're not shipping. That's a whole different thing. You're uploading. That's what you're really doing. But anyway, so here's another, I don't know if I've shown you guys this one, but this was another experiment we did with terrain. And this, it's bad. Okay, this isn't a great level. And I think this one, because this doesn't use the new spawning system either, so I can't even, this isn't even playable because the character won't spawn in this one. But it's, you know, it's a concept, but it's like, there's a certain, when you've looked at and studied level design enough, you start getting a sense for what it could be, and there's only one way to do this level. And that's the thing. What I've learned in my game is that there has to be multiple ways to clear a level, and this only has one way, which sucks. We'll go over another level real quick while we're on the topic. Some of you will remember this one. This was like my first one, and I think what's really funny. Right-click play from here doesn't work. Yeah, I know. That we have a special system with the way that spawns the character. Like, I won't get it. It's a whole thing. We won't get into that. But right-click play from here doesn't. That's. I won't bother explaining. It's complicated. But the this level you guys will remember. And what's really funny about this, because I've studied this one a bit more, and a lot of you enjoyed this level. But I think this was the case where I got really lucky and designed a good level by accident. Because this was like the first one I did properly. And I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea. I was just chucking things around. I was just doing whatever. I was improvising. And it accidentally turned out pretty good. But that only happened once. Like, every time I tried doing something after this, it sucked. Because, I don't know, the combination of whatever I did for this level just accidentally produced a good level. And I've seen how most people play this level. They don't even play the level properly. They try to do these weird shortcuts with the crates and exploiting glitches, and they've like made their own fun out of it. So it's completely unintentional, but lucky. Now here's the thing. Because, you know, this was what, 2020, I think I did this level. I could have spent the rest of 2020 just doing this over again, but that's like Russian roulette, where you're relying on the fact that you will accidentally design good levels. And I think this was the one time it kind of worked. And even then, the second half of the level kind of sucks. But the first half is pretty good. But I think that was not on purpose. That was complete luck that happened. But if you do that 10 more times, you're maybe going to get lucky once. But the other 10 will suck. And I know, because that's what I ended up trying to do. And the other levels did suck. So it was like, yeah, most people do it like this, where they glitch their way to the end. And I've seen, because this is the level that everyone makes videos about, and they speedrun through it on YouTube, and they upload it. And it looks fun, it's cool. But imagine if I built this on purpose and knew what I was doing. Imagine how much better it would be. Because, like, the weak point in this level, I think I agree the first half is actually pretty cool, but it's where you get to the second half with the crane, because I see every time people play this level for the first time, they always get stuck on the crane. Because it is bad. Like, I won't lie, it's bad level design. And I understand why it's bad level design now, but at the time I didn't understand why. So I'm just gonna, I'm exploiting the mechanics here to glitch my way up. And that's the thing as well, is that a lot of the fun does kind of rely on exploiting the movement code, which is, you got to decide if you want to keep that kind of thing in or not, right? So that's another thing. But if we go and play this the proper way, like, I've practiced this one a fair bit, and this is fun. Like, this is more fun than the other level with the big, fancy, over-detailed port. Like, this is more fun. But again, it wasn't on purpose. I just was so lucky that this is actually somewhat decent. But even if you go off trail, it starts to get a bit lame. It's only really fun when you do the golden path through. And what's really lucky as well is that it still holds up with the aerial attack, which that mechanic didn't exist when I designed this the first time. So that's actually quite lucky that didn't completely ruin the whole flow of the level. But when we get up to it's like just further past this area. I think this area is still good. I'm pretty still happy with this. Don't worry, I know the lasers are glitched out. That was something my contractor did. I just haven't had time to fix that yet. And then you then turn this corner, and it's right when we get to about here, then the entire thing falls to pieces. It's when you get here, everyone always gets stuck here. I've seen it happen. This is where the level design completely falls off, and it sucks. I mean, you guys all know this, right? Some of you have played this part, and it sucks. Everyone hates this part. That's why everyone glitches around through the crates around this area, because this area is so bad. And you know, at the time, I didn't know, and also I didn't have the courage to admit it was bad, because that's the other thing as well, is that when you know something, it's one thing to know something's bad, but it's other to admit to yourself that it's bad when you've made it. And that's a whole other thing that takes time to build. You know, it's not something a lot of people just have out of the box. So to develop that sense of security where you can criticize your own thing and not, you know, and not need to take antidepressants, like that's the whole, you know, to be able to criticize yourself and handle it as another skill, to actually be able to tell someone publicly that this thing I made is bad. If you've ever been an artist or whatever, you'll know that this is not an easy thing to do. Like, you'll understand what I mean. So there's that. And then there's actually knowing how to improve it as well. There's a whole other thing. And that's kind of what I learnt doing these levels. I know that it probably looks like it was doing nothing that whole time, but that's kind of what you pick up on, these intuitions of like what makes a good level. And yeah, you can kind of see, as I'm just playing it, you can kind of see it falling apart. You can just kind of tell that it's not as strong as the first half of the level, right? So part of the plan is eventually I'd like to redesign this with Trench Broom, with the same theming and some of the same layout, but not bad, right? With some of my new intuitions that I've picked up on. But, you know, this kind of thing I'm trying to describe, you can't cover this up with procedural generation. You can't cover this up with graphics. This is design. And design, a lot of people, when I say design, they think visuals. But what it really is not visuals. It's design is like, I don't even know how to describe it, but it isn't visuals. It's knowing how to put things together on purpose. That's what design is. And you can put visuals together on purpose, that's visual design, but level design is like more than just the graphics too. Like, that's knowing how to place a ramp and a crate and whatever on purpose and know what it's doing. And that's why with this lab, I know it might not look like the most impressive thing, but the level design for the most recent one, I'm like more enthusiastic about, because I had a thought process going on when I was making this one. And this was only like a first attempt at doing it with the Trench Broom way. And with the Trench Broom tools, it's cool because it actually encourages you to think. Whereas with the Skyport one, part of the reason that's bad as well is because the tools, they are really cumbersome to use and you don't get any space to think because everything is so difficult. Because if you want to move a crate, it's just a process. But in Trench Broom, it's easy. So you get more freed up mental energy to think about what you're doing. And, you know, those are all things I would have not known if you tried to rush me through this 5 years ago. I would have not known about those. And the levels would have all been bad. That's what would have happened. So even with this level, like, I've actually been kind of addicted to it. And that's how I know it's good. Is that, yes, it can do a bit of touching up graphically, but the design and playing it is fun. Like, I literally, when I take breaks, I'm actually just playing through this level, which is like, if even I find it good, and I have to sit here and work on it all the time, like, if even I think it's good after playing it 100 times, then it's good, I think, you know? Whereas some of the other ones, I know it doesn't hold up. So it's like, that's the thing, like, I could replay this hundreds of times, and I think it would be cool. And each time I could probably think of, like, because I'm the guy making the level, I can think of ways to improve it as well. So even here, you know, it'd be cool to then try to add extra paths or something at some point later. And with Trench Broom, with the procedure I've got, that isn't too hard to do now. So there will be a phase, I know I mentioned I've got a plan for this, and I don't want to go into full detail, but there is a phase that I have been working towards, and the phase will be characterized by the error where I can only focus on level design, where that gets to be a thing, where there isn't actually anything else I have to do besides level design. That's the error I'm working towards, but we're not in that error yet. Because to get to that error, there's a few steps to go through first, but let me worry about that. But anyway, and see, like, I actually, like, me doing that, like, I had fun playing that level. So it's considered. This is what intentional design gets you. And that took all the years of failing at making levels. That's what gets it, forges you, you know, like when you make a sword, you got to like put it through fire first before it's actually a useful sword. So that's sort of, I feel like with the levels, I've reached that point where it's not that I'm ready to make them all, because again, that's going to be an endeavor, and I'm probably going to need like a more reliable funding source to do that, but that's a whole other thing. But in terms of the workflow, it's like I can see a path forward with it. And the whole tricky part from before, the reason why I think it was really difficult before is because I couldn't see a path forward, because I was kind of on the wrong track anyway. But, you know, I don't have like experience. So like that's kind of course you wouldn't know how to do it, right? Like that's, you got to start somewhere. So that's sort of the process of what that is like figuring out the right approach, because it turns out there's a lot of wrong ways to approach shit, you know, as I've now learned. And that's insight that I would not have had if I just rushed through it in 6 months. Like that's not, when you just rush it, you don't get all of that stuff I've just said. You would go over your head if you rushed through something. You wouldn't have that level of I don't know, intimacy with what you're doing. And that's, I think, important. That comes through in the result. And the players will feel it. But they won't feel it like immediately, but if you don't have it, they will feel it. It's one of those things where if it's bad, they'll notice, but if it's good, they won't notice. And that's kind of what that's the game. So I know that's a very long answer to that, but that's kind of that'll be the next devlog after the character model. So that's something as well I've been starting to plan as well, but that's something I will get covered, because that was a huge milestone of like figuring that out. But it's not as easy as it looks, as I'm hopefully now, as you can see why. What's this? I like how everything doesn't look randomly shiny in Trench Room. Well, thank you. Yeah, and the thing is that I know that when most people boot up the map, they aren't going to notice it. But if it is too much, they would, you know? And that's the whole, like, you know how everyone now is complaining about the Unreal look, or how every game made in Unreal looks the same? That's part of what's going on here too. So there's that whole layer of, not only is it the level design, there's also the art, and having it not look like a generic Unreal game, that's a whole other avenue of that. Like in a studio, that would be someone else's job. They wouldn't even be touching level design. Their job would just be to do that. But that's a whole other thing too. And I love that stuff, you know. And it's also been really fun learning about all that and what's actually happening in the frame and all that stuff. So, you know, what I'm hoping is, if I can get to the arc of development where it's literally all that's left to do is level design, that's going to be a fun time, but it's going to be costly because you have to make a lot of content. So that's the thing I'm trying to work out a game plan on how to proceed. And, you know, funding opportunities are really difficult to come by as well. So that's the tricky part. And I don't want to have to go through another 1 year saga with a government agency again. I don't want to waste time on something like that again. So that's the other thing as well, is that when the port level I showed you earlier with all the detailed materials, because the context there as well is that was made for during the Screen Australia saga, and that was a massive time sink as well, because the levels and everything, that was like a few weeks, but the entire ordeal took like 9 months or something. I don't know if that's exactly right, but it was between April and like October, something if I'm remembering right. And that time is like not actually even spent working on the game, which is frustrating, because when you're dealing with those people, there's so much paperwork and procedure and waiting around and emailing, and it just wastes so much time because you're not actually working. You have to jump through all these hoops. And that's why I'm trying to find a way forward where I can get to make levels without having to deal with that, if you know what I mean. Which, you know, because that's time as well. So when you say that, like, it's been this many years and you've only got 3 levels, what you also have is dealing with, like, those things that come up, running a business, running a YouTube channel, and there's more to it than just the levels. If it was just levels, dude, it would be so easy. My job would be so easy if that's all I had to do. But there's a lot. There's like 10 things you have to do all that stuff, and it's I wish it was that easy, believe me, but it's so complicated, man. It's crazy. So anyway, so with this, at least, look, I know it could probably, I think once I get the stuff I have urgently out of the way, I'll probably be able to criticize this a bit better and think about ways to touch it up. But as a starting foundational point, the skeleton and bones of this level has a much stronger foundation than anything that's come before. And that's how I know it's good, because everything is sort of laid out with a reason to it. And some of you can notice it, which is cool. But, you know, it's there's a whole, I don't know. I'm trying to think of how to summarize that all in a succinct way, but I guess it's making a game is a big meta game in a sense. It's a big game of strategy. And yeah, I am looking forward to that arc though, where it's literally just all level design and that's all that's left. But you got to get that's the fun part. You got to get the hard bits out of the way first, and then you can have fun. So that's sort of the way I see it. But anyway, what's the time? I got to get going. I got a video to work on. I got to work on my editing, and I've got to clean up some materials and probably a few more things. I got a few things to get through today, so I'm going to get to it. Thanks for joining me for another Project Feline stream. I hope you found some of this insightful. I'm hopeful to have that video out like in the next few days if I can figure out how to get DaVinci to do what I want. That's what I'm hoping for. But we'll see. It's probably just growing pains and that kind of thing. I'm sure after a while I'll get used to it. In the meantime, I'll be back streaming next week though, with just whatever I get to work on next. Again, it'll depend on how this goes, but we'll see. I'll gotta like go through my checklist. And yeah, thanks so much for joining. I appreciate it. I will see you guys next week for some more checking in, for some more progress.